Is everyone here? Okay. Well, without further ado, I'd like to start the formal part of our day today. Once again, I would like to thank everyone for coming. It's an extremely great privilege to be here. As you may have heard, my name is Paulius Kunčinas. I'm the chairman of the Blockchain Center Vilnius. Today is my first day here, and very, very excited to be here. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say it's one of the probably happiest days of my life. And so a new star is born. I'm a little bit nervous. I think I imagine I'm going through what a lot of the great entrepreneurs in the past were witnessing, what I would summarize as 2 words: hello, future. something we all agree is happening here, and something exciting. We're on the cusp of a new chapter in terms of internet and technology development. More importantly, we're at the cusp of a new movement. I see blockchain above and beyond. It's a movement that gives power back to the people, back to the smaller companies, to the entrepreneurs. It creates a lot of different new opportunities. And we've already seen this is a very broad church, very broad gathering. We managed to already have partners from 15 or 20 plus countries, from different sectors, walks of life, traditional and new, small and big. And I think this is the main excitement, is that we're able to connect here under this roof, and I hope it will become the new home of blockchain center, blockchain industry, not just in Lithuania, but for the whole of Europe. And without further ado, I'd like to invite the inspiration behind this, the architect, Mr. Antanas Guoga, one of the leading entrepreneurs in Lithuania, a disruptor, a person who never takes no for an answer, who believes in dreams. He refuses to stop, and real inspiration. And I'd like to call upon Mr. Antanas Guoga, member of the European Parliament, founder of Blockchain Center Vilnius, to give his inaugural remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome all our guests, ministers. We have members of Parliament. We have representatives from the European Commission, European Central Bank, and many, many other honored guests. Thank you very much for coming. A lot of people came from China, from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from Australia. It's worth coming to Lithuania, I can tell you that much. This is the best country in the world. And you know where we get these ideas? We get these ideas traveling. I met Sam Lee, who was the founder of Blockchain Global, sitting here in front row with us all today. We're very honored to have you. And he had the inspiration of changing the world through empowerment, through knowledge, through technology. It's happening. Lithuania is doing amazing. A lot of money has been raised and a lot of great projects are happening right now. And we should be very thankful for that, because it's giving us a real opportunity to change the world. And we can do it here, and for the better. I have a great team who have taken this forward, because alone you cannot do anything. Unbelievable amount of people are supporting this project. Thank you for your dedication, for Paulius, who's doing it absolutely for free, for no gain, having in mind his country, and the rest of the board who have joined us. There's no payment. You know? They're doing it to really change something. They really believe in it. And this is very important. I really value your time, because me, I'm just a dreamer. You know? I've got to be honest, right? I probably couldn't do anything. But with a team, we're a force. And if Lithuania starts working together in a team, and all institutions start working together for the better of Lithuania and Europe, this is going to be the greatest country in the world. And this is what we should aim for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony, Antane, for your inspirational words and kind remarks. Without further ado, I'd like to invite our keynote speaker, His Excellency, the Minister of Economy, Mr. Virginijus Sinkevičius, to give his keynote address.
Thank you very much. So it is a proud day for Lithuania. The very first blockchain center is opened in Lithuania. It shows that we are a brave country. And we were briefly talking about the blockchain technology with some of these guests, and it's true that technology is not opened fully its potential yet, and it's great. It's like Lithuania. Our potential is huge, but still not opened fully. So we're going shoulder to shoulder together. And I'm very glad that in Europe, we're going to be the first country leading it. Yesterday, I was talking to Kaunas Technological University students, international students, and I gave them one friendly advice. I told them, regarding your career, look no further than Lithuania. I'm glad that this crowd here doesn't need my advice. Welcome to Lithuania.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister, for your very kind speech and opening remarks. I would now like to call upon the Martin Davidson, a partner in Australia and the Global Director and CEO of Blockchain Centre Melbourne.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Martin Davidson. I'm the Global Director and CEO of the Blockchain Centre. I've been in the industry now for 4 years, with 3 years spent building and developing the Blockchain Centre into what it is today. We've been expanding blockchain centres around the world, from Melbourne, Australia, to Shanghai and to Suzhou in China, and more centres will be opening in Australia and around the world this year. I would also like to mention our important strategic alliance and partnership with the NEM Foundation. Their president, Lon Wong, is here today, I'm glad to say, whose team we have helped, thank you, whose team we have helped with their training for their soon-to-be launched NEM Blockchain Centre in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Today, we add a powerful new ally to our global community. I welcome you all to the launch of the new Blockchain Centre Vilnius. These are very exciting times in the journey of our global expansion. Many people ask me, what is the Blockchain Centre and why do we need one? My answer, the Blockchain Centre is the fertile ground from which revolutionary businesses grow. We support small business and help accelerate those businesses into successful, powerful, real-world applications and solutions. For example, one of our most recent startup success stories is a company called Blockgrain, run by Sam and Kyle. They sit and have worked at the Blockchain Centre Melbourne for the last 6 months. Sam and Kyle will use the NEM blockchain platform for supply chain in the agricultural industry. Last week, they were awarded $1 million worth of ZEM cryptocurrency from the NEM Community Development Fund. This is our ecosystem in action, allowing businesses with real-world solutions to connect and accelerate beyond their dreams. This illustrates the power of the networks that can be found at the blockchain centres. Our new incubator program called Block Engine will seek to replicate this type of acceleration right here in Vilnius. The world is changing at a fast pace, and Tony and Agle and their teams will create such opportunities for startup businesses throughout Europe. That ecosystem will become the breeding ground for blockchain businesses to rapidly grow. Our vision is to accelerate the adoption of blockchain technology globally and be a hub for blockchain education, co-working and community events. By focusing on these 3 key areas, we provide society with an education-focused environment, offering people from all backgrounds the information and knowledge about the various blockchain technologies. Also, we provide new startup business projects the access they need to our local and global business networks in order to take full advantage of this rapidly expanding ecosystem. Business is changing, and centralized systems of control are systems of the past. They are slow, expensive, and open to manipulation, but they are all we know and understand. That is why education is so important. Currently, businesses want to utilize blockchain technology, but there is still a lack of understanding of how to use it, and there aren't enough skilled developers to build the required applications. That's where we come in. With our blockchain developer courses and many workshops and community events, these assist to educate, connect, and accelerate the industry. By having access to fresh and new education programs here at Blockchain Center Vilnius, this will provide a more informed community for the future. Our co-working ecosystem has flourished over the past 3 years, with over 50 startup members having worked at the centre, raising 4.6 million Australian dollars, and now have a combined annual revenue of 43.5 million Australian dollars. Employed staff within these startups has grown from 35 to over 140 people. The benefits for new blockchain center startup businesses launching from this center are tenfold for Vilnius. By positioning itself as the epicenter for blockchain, for the European blockchain industry, providing economic activity, innovation across fintech and other sectors, more jobs and important taxation revenue. So, I hope you now understand how Blockchain Center is a place where like-minded, passionate, creative entrepreneurs can exchange ideas to build better businesses for a better world and gain access to resources to make that happen. I would like to recognize all the hard work already done over the past few months by Blockchain Center Vilnius team here, which has made this launch possible. Thank you also to Tony for immediately seeing the value in what the Blockchain Center offers, and for his shared vision and passion for the industry. Also to Agle and Thomas for flying to Australia to meet my team for intense training last year. Thank you all for the hard work from the new extended Blockchain Center Vilnius team and community of volunteers who have picked up this with so much enthusiasm. Thank you all for your time today and for being here at the launch of the Blockchain Center Vilnius. This is a tremendous milestone and achievement for the blockchain industry and will create many opportunities for the people of Vilnius. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Martin. We are very fortunate to have you as a partner. And as the Chinese saying, a journey of 5,000 miles starts with one small step. I believe we have today made the first steps. And I believe it's going to be a long-term successful partnership, and we'll hopefully make you proud, and the network and the community. We are called Blockchain Center. Some of you will say, how come the decentralized center? We are a network of friends, of people who believe and share values, and I think that's what's really important. But now the most important part is the official opening ceremony. I'd like to call our assistants here with a ribbon, please. Thank you. Now, can I invite Mr. Minister and Ms. Tony to join us in officially opening the center. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, I think you two will get it. Okay. So that's the moment we've all been waiting for. Okay. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, that's the official opening of the Blockchain Center Vilnius. Woo! Thank you again, Minister and Tony, for officiating the launch. Now we're going to get down to business. Without much further ado, we have quite an exciting program for you, which will consist of the first part. We'll focus on the government panel and the future of blockchain seen from the policymakers' perspective. And can I please invite on stage Mr. Pierre Marot, who's the team leader of FinTech Blockchain, Access to Finance at the European Commission DG Connect. Very, very happy to have you. Thank you for coming. We also very privileged to have Mr. Dirk Bullman, who's a fintech coordinator and advisor to the Director General of the European Central Bank. Thank you for coming, sir. Thank you for joining us. I'd also like to call upon Mr. Vlad Radish. He's the Government Relations Director at Bitfury Group. Thank you for coming, sir. And I'd like to invite on stage Mrs. Sian Jones. She is a founder of European Digital Currency and Blockchain Technology Forum at CoinSalt. Very nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. Also, my good dear friend, Dr. Atif Ansar. Thank you for making the journey all the way from the British Isles. Atif is a dear friend, but also he's a foundation board. He's a director at Said Business School, University of Oxford, my alma mater, and now very much focused on artificial intelligence and blockchain, also a visiting fellow at Stanford. So very, very happy to have you. Thank you, thank you. Also, we are fortunate to have Mrs. Leila Donk. She's a foundation board member at the World Economic Forum, Global Shapers Community. I believe straight from Davos, right? We also have some snow here for you. As you know, yesterday, in fact, we have a whole airplane full of guests who just came from Davos, World Economic Forum, and I believe blockchain is the talk of the year, right? So very happy to have you. Thank you. And I'm your moderator, Mr. Paulius Kunčinas. I'd like to today basically focus on the question of the government role in this industry. And I have a number of questions which I've prepared for all of you. But perhaps, if you don't mind, I would like to address this first question to Mr. Pierre Marot from the Commission. And my impression, I spend a lot of time in Belgium and Brussels, is that the Commission has a very constructive view of the blockchain center and has been monitoring developments for last 3 or more years and has already a project up and running its own blockchain lab. But I think the big challenge is what the industry is expecting in this year is the regulation of digital currency. And of course, it's a sensitive issue for the industry, for us, Lithuania, because we were heavily involved last year. And we're looking for some leadership in this discussion and to understand which way the conversation is going. So perhaps, without further ado, I'd like to ask to give us an update on the latest thinking within the Commission on this.
Yes, thank you. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I mean, it's really a pleasure for me to be here in this first blockchain center. And in a way, it's the first concretization of also policies that we have that we are developing at EU level, which is what was said already. Is that we see blockchain as a major breakthrough, and it's a fantastic opportunity for European players to build new businesses, to innovate, to create new type of value, to change the way those values are created and shared. And so the first, I would say, policy angle in particular for me, who is working for the more from the innovation approach, I would say, is indeed that for Europe it's tremendously important that we seize all the opportunity introduced by blockchain. For that, indeed, we have started different action, and we are now working with different services within the Commission in order to shape a coherent strategy for it. But what we have started already to do, and it will be announced next week by Commissioner Maria Gabriel in charge of digital economy and society, is a new blockchain observatory and forum, which will be for us a tool in order to monitor all the new development, key development happening here in Europe, but also worldwide, and also to analyze what are the trends, what are the implications, and also it's important to stress it. It will be a forum, which means not only something to observe, but also to help for dialogue with all the stakeholders. and a way also to advance reflection at EU level or with different EU players about, okay, what are the implications, what are the issues, how we should move in order to fix those issues. It could be through regulation, it could be through other approach, but this tool would be important for us. Another type of activities is indeed, as you say, since more than 3 years now, we found already collaborative project for blockchain through the program Horizon 2020, which is our program for supporting research innovation. And the question could be at the time of where there are so impressive investments which are done through ICO, why the Commission should spend money, but I think that the added value for those type of projects is that it's project which enable to bring different partners together. So it's not only to innovate, but it's also to help other partners to prepare for the uptake of this innovation or to contribute. So I think it's something which is important, which has started already. We have already more than around 20 projects supported at EU level, and this funding will increase in the coming years and probably under the next what we call financial perspective, so beyond 2021. And we expect it could be up to 300 million that will be spent for projects that concern blockchain in the next 3 years. We work also on standardization. There is an active discussion with standardization body at the ISO level. I mean, Sian is also involved in those type of activities, so she can tell more about that. But so we actively participate in the standardization effort. I mean, we also going to investigate what could be an infrastructure of public services based on blockchain. This is something that we will launch a study very soon this year about that. And about your question on regulation, this is actually a more difficult one for me. There are two things that I can say. First, we are conscious that in order to enable blockchain to flourish, or blockchain-based innovation and company developing those solutions to flourish and to be successful in Europe or globally, but from Europe, we need to move towards more legal certainty. And I think 2018 will be a year where we will reinforce the dialogue in order to move towards this legal certainty. It doesn't mean that we are going to regulate or to announce a specific regulation this year. This I cannot commit about that. But I can tell you that there will be probably within the Commission, but also with other institutions, with the support of the Parliament and the leader for promoting blockchain in the Parliament, but also for other institutions like the European Central Bank, there will be more and more intense discussion about how to move to a more legal certainty. About the case of cryptocurrency, there is no plan for regulation on cryptocurrency as far as I know today, but I think that we are also, with all the institutions, monitoring more and more closely about what is happening and to anticipate what should, how the thing should be dealt with at European level.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pierre. So if I correctly understand, the main focus will be to harness the blockchain technology for innovation sector and help innovation companies to basically use this. And on regulation, we're still open-ended, still discussion continues. Right. I'd like to, if I may, bring in Mr. Dirk Boelman from European Central Bank, one of the key stakeholders, I would say, in this discussion. We are, as you know, one of the reasons why the fintech industry and Lithuania has become so prominent is because of our central bank. We have to give them credit for being proactive, engaging, and we have, as a lot of you know here, they're launching the new sandbox, blockchain sandbox, in 2019, next year. And I wonder, but the ECB's perspective on this, because it is a very much ongoing discussion on what are the digital currencies, what is blockchain supposed to work for, and especially in the financial industry. And could you give us, as much as you can, the state of affairs and what to expect in 2018 on this important issue?
With pleasure. Thank you.
Sure.
Maybe I should start out from saying that what the ECB does, what the ECB is concerned with, this is liquidity flows. We care about the flow of money, cash, securities, collateral, and we are concerned about the safety and efficiency of these mechanisms. So this is the starting point, and then we ask ourselves, what role could blockchain potentially play in this? Is it possible that blockchain somehow improves the efficiency while not having a negative impact on safety? This is the question we ask ourselves. We ask these questions not so much from a regulatory perspective. This is Brussels. We are Frankfurt. We have 3 different roles in the. We have to draw the dividing line there. We have 3 different roles in the field of market infrastructure services, of liquidity mechanisms and liquidity flow. One is the operator. We operate services ourselves. So we have to ask ourselves the question, can blockchain play a role in our own services? We operate 2 of the world's largest market infrastructure services in the world in the field of cash payments. It's Target 2, Target Securities, if you're familiar with that, in the field of security settlement. So the question is, can we use these new technologies? At this stage, we have said that the technology is not yet ready for prime time, because we are speaking about mass adoption. We are speaking about a service that is the backbone of the financial sector, and we cannot easily then replace this by a technology which is still relatively new. But we are exploring this, and we also have established a test lab inside the ECB. We are cooperating inside the community of central banks in Europe, and we also have joined forces with Bank of Japan, for example, our famous project Stella. So if you go to the ECB website and put in Stella there, then you'll see what we are doing with the Bank of Japan, that we really explore whether efficiency and safety requirements could be met if you put, for example, a payment mechanism on DLT. I suppose the operator role. The second role is Catalyst. Catalyst is European integration. Now we have to foster European integration, and we also have to ask ourselves whether blockchain can help, or whether it could hinder maybe the European integration process. Here we have established a group with market participants, and we're exploring this. The interoperability question comes into play here, the question whether some barriers which are in existence for more than almost 2 decades, I should say, whether they can be finally abolished with the help of blockchain. This is what we are also exploring. Then the third role, which is maybe closer to Brussels, is that we oversee market infrastructure service. We oversee the mechanisms which we operate ourselves, but also in the market. And then we have to ask ourselves whether these the assessment frameworks are still fit for purpose, whether they are sufficiently agnostic to the underlying technology, that we don't stifle innovation. So these are the 3 roles and the 3 approaches we're having, and the most active role we are playing at the moment is in the field of the test lab, where we really do experimental work and get hands-on experience with new technologies.
Thank you, Mr. Pullman, for very frank remarks. I appreciate it. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. By the way, we'll have a chance to ask follow-up questions. But perhaps I'd like to change the focus a little bit and talk from the demand side, if I may, Ms. Radish. Where do you see in 2018, where is the demand coming from for blockchain technology, especially in the public domain, if I may? Sure. Sorry. Okay.
So maybe I could just address one comment to your earlier questions, because I think they're very closely related. One of the demands of industry, if we can call it that, of the private sector, is something which Pierre mentioned, which is legal certainty, regulatory certainty. It's very difficult for any business to be able to operate effectively if it doesn't know what the legal environment is, and particularly in areas where it touches traditional sectors that are already regulated. So understanding where the boundaries are, what you can and can't do, will helps innovators address their new markets. Now, I should explain now that I work also for the Gibraltar Financial Services Commission, and indeed you very kindly invited our Minister for Commerce, Minister Isola, who unfortunately couldn't make it today, and so he asked me to address some comments on this. But as a European jurisdiction, we've certainly been very sensitive to the needs of the private sector in terms of obtaining that regulatory certainty, and we've also been conscious of the needs of consumers to be able to deal with confidence with businesses in the sector, and also of the financial supply chain, banks providing banking facilities to have confidence to deal with these businesses, because that is still a significant challenge. And so I think when we're looking at regulation, we're not just looking at the not just at the area of focus that we most commonly hear about, which is around anti-money laundering and countering terrorist finance, but also the need to provide prudential and conduct regulation in order to protect consumers, and coincidentally also to protect the jurisdictions in which those businesses operate, because when it's an unregulated space, it's really hard to provide any kind of certainty about whether you're dealing with good businesses or bad businesses. We've certainly addressed that market need for regulatory certainty from both supply side and from demand side by providing a regulatory framework. And indeed we have our DLT regulations that came into force on the 1st of January this year to try and provide that regulatory certainty, certainly in areas where customers are entrusting their assets or their value in the hands of others who are using the technology. We also see the role in that of helping to support the use of the technology, especially as a means of venture financing. And I think all of that feeds then into where the demand is. And the spectrum of demand is, of course, broad. You've got the traditional payment sectors. Clearly, some of the goals of the earlier idealistic goals of Bitcoin and blockchain as a means of democratizing payment have yet to be properly appreciated, yet alone realized. But certainly the traditional actors are already exploring the use of the technology, and so we see banks and financial institutions looking to the technology to assist in providing greater efficiency around clearing and settlement, as well as many other back office functions. We're seeing demand from the public sector, from government itself, including our own in Gibraltar, but we're certainly not unique in that, looking to find ways in which the technology can instill trust between government and the state and its citizens. And we're also seeing tremendous novelty in developing new products and services. So we often hear about the disruptive impact on existing products and services, but actually what we're finding now is whole new products and services that did not exist before, and finding that this technology, DLT, is able to help them.
I would agree with you. I think one of the most exciting things that I witnessed here in Lithuania is the sheer explosion of of creativity and new ideas last year that we saw thanks to the blockchain technology. It's probably one of the most powerful driving forces behind innovation right now in Lithuania. And of course, also what I found very encouraging is that nearly every ministry in Lithuania has its own blockchain project. They're just operating quietly in a sort of silo environment, and hopefully through Blockchain Center we will bring them all here to network, exchange ideas and good practice. Now moving on, I'm very pleased to have Dr. Atif Ansar from Said Business School, representing University of Oxford. And you, Atif, you see a lot of executives coming through your programs you travel a lot in the US. I think one of the interesting points you raised, that blockchain doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's all other technologies also, like artificial intelligence. There's a lot of work going on in DNA, and medical industry is very interested in using blockchain, for instance. So I wonder where you see what's the direction of travel in terms of where do you see convergence with other technologies, and how can blockchain add value in those?
It's an excellent question, Paulus. First of all, I'm thrilled to be in Vilnius and Lithuania. Lithuania obviously has an incredibly innovative and talented population. It's very tech savvy. So coming from the third world of the British Isles, I am delighted to be here, and there's much to learn from the advances being made in Lithuania and bring them back to the UK. Lithuania is also a great sandbox, really, because of its highly innovative small population. Things that work here can scale very quickly across Europe and rest of the world. So I think there's tremendous enthusiasm in observing how these technologies develop here. The question you asked, Paulus, is how are people in decision-making authority, executives in large companies in big public sector viewing blockchain and sort of toolkit of technologies? And a lot of my work is on mega projects, $1 billion plus investments. And that pulls me into a lot of consulting work with CFOs. And whilst I work on capital allocation decisions with them, they begin asking questions about how do I use AI, how do I use blockchain, and a toolkit of technologies to support a huge range of issues that keep CFOs up at night. Be it procurement, be it making payments, be it contracting, tendering, settling invoices, double entry accounting. So there's a whole range of issues they face. Now, what's emerging from my research is executives are largely technology agnostic. What they want is their pain to go away. So kind of the provocation to many entrepreneurs in the room today is focus on the end user's pain points and then come up with a toolkit that can help solve it. Now, blockchain is very promising as an underlying tool for that. Allow me to give you an example. The UK makes £170 billion worth of welfare payments each year as a government to its citizens. It costs over £50 million to process these payments, and it takes 3 to 4 days, if not more, for the recipients to receive their welfare checks. Now, from a government perspective, it's costly, it's slow, it's administratively very cumbersome. From a citizen perspective, these are people in great need. They can't wait 3-4 days for their benefits to arrive in their accounts. And they too have to incur costs on their end. Blockchain can obviously, and many innovations have already shown this, can resolve this problem quite easily. So as one application, it can make this problem go away. Similarly, in the UK, we tried to institute a national identity card many years ago. It ended up in a complete fiasco, like many things typically tend to in the UK, I'm afraid.
Like the referendum.
That fiasco of a national identity card could now be revisited in light of technological advancements that blockchain has enabled, which could also include a degree of AI in them. So in a way, the technologies lend themselves to being blended in creative ways to solve real-world problems. I would support my colleague's proposition. Government to citizen relationships require a level of security, stability, interoperability that demand blockchain-type solutions. So we've seen the rise of social networks. Almost all social networks are peer-to-peer. There's hardly any social networks that are government to citizen. With blockchain, we can now change that narrative and begin creating highly secure ways of dealing between governments and citizens, be it issuing you a land registry or your passport, your healthcare record, et cetera, et cetera. It sort of creates a platform to run multiple applications. So I see tremendous future in that. My sense is to scale to that future requires experimenting with individual apps in a very tight lab-controlled fashion, and then exposing them to increasing levels of uncertainty, so that they can scale through that.
Thank you, Andy. So the message is to focus on what keeps CFOs up at night and addressing their pain. But presumably it means it has to be, one of my understandings of blockchain, it has to be recurrent pain. It's blockchain is at its best when you're addressing a process that's simple, that usually recurs all the time, that's easily to predict, and therefore you create a decentralized way of creating efficiency. But it's a nightmare for situations that require discretion.
Yes.
And if it's a highly sort of a fluid situation, it is difficult. So sometimes I get the message from the industry, you cannot put everything on blockchain.
Yeah.
There are still processes that require human interference and decision making. Like, if I may bring you in on this discussion, I remember actually Professor Klaus Schwab was in Vilnius a few months ago, and he made a very few astute remarks, and one of them is obviously that Lithuania has to get ready for Industry 4, right? The fourth industrial revolution, and that's something that was a wake-up call for us all of here to really start focusing. And I wonder, in the traditional industry, where do you see synergies, and how can traditional exporters, because Lithuania is an exporting country, producing food, furniture, electronics, how can they take advantage of blockchain, in your view?
So we just arrived this morning from Davos, and there's no doubt the most popular topic this year in Davos is blockchain. No matter it's in the conference center or just on the street, you can just hear the word blockchain, cryptocurrency. So everybody is talking about it. That's very exciting. And I have the privilege to talk to a lot of entrepreneurs from the traditional industry, including the founder of WPP, Sir Martin himself. And we've been discussing, how blockchain can bring the advertising industry to the next level. So I think there's a lot of opportunities that the traditional industry can actually, bring their business model to the next level through blockchain. But the problem here is, for those big enterprise, they're too conservative, and like the business too big, it's difficult for them, to turn as startup companies. So there's a lot of education programs going on within the enterprise, and there's also they trying to do investment into particular projects which is related to their traditional industry. I can give you an example, Alibaba, like everybody knows, is the biggest e-commerce enterprise in China. And they actually found their blockchain lab last year in April. So it's the first blockchain lab in China. And follow Alibaba, all the big companies in China these days, they want to do something with blockchain. We call it the 11th of January, the day of blockchain in China, because in that particular day, more than 30 public companies make their press release, and they all saying, we're going to do something with blockchain. And the share price all went up, like 15 to 20% average. But there's bring another challenge is they don't have the team, they don't have the talents who can develop the technology. So I think Blockchain Center will be a wonderful platform, for us to connect our blockchain talents to traditional industry and also to government, so everybody can communicate, can learn, just like the World Economic Forum. Will welcome politicians, no matter is like President Trump or our President Xi Jinping, as long as you're willing to open a discussion to communicate, you all be welcomed in Blockchain Center. And I think Blockchain Center has been so grateful in terms of how to educate the public to understand the technology. So have some very great results in Australia. So in terms of regulations, I think Australia government is one of the most open-minded government to embrace the technology. We really hope our blockchain center can be the bridge, to connect everybody and make the regulators know more about the technology, so they when they make decisions, they can make the right decision.
Thank you, Leila. Before I open the floor to questions from the audience, I can't resist asking you one question and a follow-up. Is we have to be honest that this we will face a lot of competition here in Lithuania. And I hear that some clients are going to Estonia, which annoys me very much. I don't want to hear about digital country Estonia anymore. And of course, Gibraltar is making great advances. We have Switzerland, we have Scandinavia. So we're not alone in this, and there's a healthy competition. And a question from outside, for guests who are here. What do you think are strengths and of course, what are our weaknesses? How can we be better, more attractive to clients from Asia, from clients from Australia, from UK and the world? What can we do even better, do you think?
So I come from a consulting background. So for the past few years, I've been helping my clients to achieve their globalization agenda. Also, to help them to deal with government relations that can be a little bit difficult or challenging in China, especially. So I think the best way for industries to grow, no matter it's within your country or globally, there's 3 key points. One is always working the government, get the support from the government. I think globally speaking, China's One Belt, One Road initiative can be really related to fourth industrial revolution. So our President Xi Jinping actually mentioned last year at the One Belt, One Road Open Forum that One Belt, One Road is not only about building infrastructures, it's not only about exporting goods and services. It's actually we together building up a road of innovation. So I highly recommend Lithuanian delegations go to Beijing, talk to our Ministry of Information and Technology, to collaborate together. The second point is public recognition. So we need education. The best way for regulators to make right decision is actually when the people in this country, they understand the technology. If we look at China, why we have to separate blockchain technology and cryptocurrency separate? Because the public, they don't understand the difference. They can't see the risks from those bad projects. So if everybody understands this technology, I think we should all open-minded, the government will be very, very support. So the third point is the support and the social impact from those big enterprise. So I'm so happy to see we have a lot of great big companies already in partnership with our blockchain center. I think that's a very good start. So really looking forward to working with everybody.
Thank you, Leila. Sure. And then I'll be looking for questions from the audience after one follow-up. Yeah.
Just a really short point, but I don't think we should be using the word competition and blockchain in the same sentence. I think we should be using collaboration and blockchain in the same sentence.
Very nice. On that note, can I have questions from the audience or remarks or observations, please? I'm looking for, yes, Mr. Sorin.
Yes, Sorin Moisa, member of the European Parliament, who has been following this issue for a while now. I would like to add to what the colleague from the Commission and the colleagues from the Commission and the ECB mentioned on the regulatory space. There is a very, and I think you have touched on it for a bit, but I think this is really momentous. It's very important, and it couldn't be stressed enough. In December, or the 15th of December, there was an agreement. It's political now. The lawyers are working on sort of spelling it out in legal articles between the 3 institutions, Parliament, Council, and Commission, on amending the existing anti-money laundering regime in order to integrate cryptocurrencies and the whole ecosystem around cryptocurrencies into it. From now on, once we have legislation, it will be a directive. It will need to be transposed by member states. But for instance, an exchange or a broker cryptocurrencies will have to register, will have to have proper procedures of KYC, know your customer, will have to do enhanced screening of clients who are suspicious for whatever reason. This is truly momentous, because I know, for instance, of many exchanges and brokers, smaller entities who have huge issues working with banks because the business is unregulated in terms of know your customer and money laundering and so on. So this is really helping a lot. It's not regulating cryptocurrencies as such, of course, but it is allowing them into the mainstream. It is civilizing the space. It is bringing light and coherence and predictability to this space. And it will allow for a more plural market, where more players will come into it. Obviously, there's more competition, there's more transparency. It will be better for all. So I would almost equate this to a type of official recognition, once it really formally comes into the official Gazette of the European Union, of the cryptocurrency space and everything that is linked to it, and of the technology itself. And I agree that, of course, we need to distinguish. There are still crooks and imposters out there, but there are also many respectable projects which do use cryptocurrency as well. So this is not about gambling. I hear a lot of rubbish, also even in the Financial Times, comparing this to pure gambling and so on. So we do need to separate the imposters and the crooks and things that are not okay from legitimate business and legitimate projects. And I think this compromise that we have reached in Brussels is momentous in this regard. Thank you.
I think it says a lot when the CEO of one of the biggest financial institutions, JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, apologizes in the Financial Times for incorrectly likening cryptocurrencies to illegal activities. And I remember the discussion we had at the Parliament when you famously said that these currencies are here to stay. So we better talk about it and to reach, as you said, a normal situation. Looking for further comments, questions, please.
Hello.
Addressed to the panel,
okay.
please.
Yeah. Hello, here in the back.
Ah, sorry.
I'm Raffaele Ciriello. I'm an assistant professor at the European Blockchain Center in Copenhagen.
Welcome.
And you were concluding with the nice remarks that you should see this as an opportunity for collaboration, not competition. So my simple question is, how can we collaborate? Where do you see the focus areas of the Blockchain Center in Vilnius in terms of research? Of course, we have been very active in various areas such as logistics, finance, public administration, social networks, and so on. What is the position of the Blockchain Center Vilnius? And
okay, maybe I'll take that question. Well, first of all, we recognize this is a very nice physical space, this building, but the reality of the world is that we live in these that's where we spend most of our time, and our mental space is online. What we want is the genuine power is the network. I mean, the reason we're so delighted to be working with Melbourne and Shanghai is that we believe this is going to be a powerful network, and we want to. And the most important thing that I learned is that, there is still the blockchain technology was supposed to create trust amongst strangers, instant trust, which is so hard to come by these days. And the technology is supposed to be, but the people behind the technology are still not willing to trust each other. And there's a lot of silo mentality. Even I see it here in Lithuania. They're doing things, but quietly. They don't want to share. And the way we want to break through this barrier is by having open conversations, discussions, exchange, at risk of even leaking our intellectual property or startup ideas. I think this is a movement that is so much bigger and better than all of us. And I think the simple step forward is to have open channels of communication. I want to promote our group. We have a Blockchain Center Telegram. We have a lot of people there. You're all welcome to join us. And we have a constant ongoing conversation. Every single day we're exchanging ideas, photos, we're encouraging each other, because sometimes it's a lonely battle. Sometimes it's difficult to be inspired because you are facing a lot of resistance. But I think we're doing a reasonably good job, and thank you for leading us in this direction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
So another idea around collaboration is a lot of blockchain startups will face a scaling problem. So they'll be able to get a degree of angel or venture funding, particularly if they've got an interesting idea, and that be able to bootstrap them and get them going for a couple of years. But then they face a classic problem of valley of death. So there's a lot of capital available at the early stages and a lot of capital available for very, very large companies. Very little capital available for pure scale-ups. And crossing that chasm can be deadly for far majority of scale-ups. So I think my suggestion would be to think very carefully about how you're going to catapult yourself from an early stage company to a proper scale-up company. My sense is a lot of entrepreneurs enter the startup space in order to change the world. Along the way, they become greedy, and they end up neither rich nor changing the world. Right? So commit to one or the other. So a lot of blockchain apps will launch with the desire to become the Facebooks of their industry. It ain't gonna happen. So you know, just basically partner up when you arrive at that chasm of catapulting yourself to, and essentially share IP. Don't be greedy. You know, figure out mechanisms to be open about your patents. Otherwise, it's a very difficult journey.
As they say in Asia, sharing is caring, right?
Yeah.
and indeed, sure.
Once again, I'm going to have to apologize for my little interjections, but I think you mentioned the magic word patent a moment ago, and I'd like to dwell on that for just a second. What we are starting to see, and we've seen this trend in the last 18 months or so, is an incredible rise in the number of patents in this particular sector. Purely by chance, I've done work with the EU Intellectual Property Office, and some studies have been carried out that have shown that there's the early signs of patent trolling, patent grabbing. And that is a real challenge in a blockchain space, which is an open source space largely. And it's an issue, I think, that needs to be addressed. If it isn't addressed, we'll find that the brilliant entrepreneurs and innovators will find themselves shackled by the very large corporations that are just hoarding patents wherever they can, and that isn't what blockchain is about.
And I suppose for our jurisdiction, as protecting the intellectual property and IP is going to be one of the big challenges and necessities. I'm looking for another question. We have still a few more minutes. Maybe questions to our panelists. If
Sorry, can I?
Thank you, panel. My name is Jeremy Samuel. I'm actually in Europe working on an Australian crypto startup. So I've just been talking to banks in Zurich, banks in Valletta. Malta hasn't been mentioned, but it's also a terrific jurisdiction, along with Gibraltar and many of the others. The challenge I see, everything that I'm hearing the panel say is fantastic and so exciting and inspiring for somebody trying to start up in the space. But on the other hand, I've spent the last 2 weeks talking to bankers and lawyers telling me you can't have a bank account that takes money to and from an exchange. We won't let you interact in this way or that way with client resources. You're going to have to regulate this part of you as a security. We're going to bury you in 10 feet of paperwork to allow you to do the other. So I guess I wonder what kind of situation, what kind of role you see potentially, and I mean, my journey in all of this, I should say, really started out under the inspiration of the Blockchain Center in Melbourne, so I'm very excited to be here for this opening. I think it's fantastic, and congratulations to Sam and everybody who's been involved in it, and Martin, and but the question is, in the face of your enthusiasm, my enthusiasm, I assume the enthusiasm of most of the people in this room, how do we overcome the banks, the lawyers, etc., before they kind of strangle us?
Let's rise against banks and lawyers. We do need them at the end of the day. That's most of the monetary resources still kept. Perhaps could we ask one of you to take this question about how we coexist with conservative traditional banks and lawyers, and how do we make this work? Sorry. Yes, thank you.
I mean, here again, I think that well, first, I have not the magic recipe for the current situation, and I think it's more about every entrepreneur, I mean, to be convincing and also to be transparent about what is done and to do things in a way which is in agreement with some key principles that Sian could maybe develop what is done in Gibraltar, which is based on this approach. Then I think it will be as part of we move towards this legal certainty, and many thanks for having reminded that at EU level we have also made progress through the amendment of the fourth anti-money directive, which now recognize the necessity to make know your customer action, and it will help to I mean, to provide more confidence, more trust, also for players like banks in this type of activities. So I think it will be step by step. It could be by issuing guidelines. It should be maybe by adopting piece of technology that helps to make this confidence. But then I cannot commit for the bankers or the lawyer myself. So.
Yeah. Sorry, sure.
Okay. Yeah, colleagues. This is really interesting question, because we met this question many times trying to implement projects in the government. So our company successfully finalized 3 projects, 2 in Ukraine and 1 in Georgia. But of course, it's always the problem of trust. And I just want to remind to all of us that blockchain, the nature of blockchain is the digital trust. So if we have problems with the old world, we have engaged old world to the new digital trust. And believe me, it's possible to do. So we met such challenges during the development of the projects and overcome them, because we faced the new instruments of interactions between government and citizens, between the government employees inside the government organization. So really, if the representatives of government or banks or legal authorities, so they really should understand the basics of this technology and the basement of the digital trust. It will help to overcome all these difficulties.
Thank you. Sure.
I'm leaving a bit maybe here the central bank territory, but what I think could be the magic word is really sandboxing. That you mentioned the Central Bank of Lithuania offering this. I know about other central banks doing this, national regulators doing this, but there's no level playing field. There's competition between the central banks, between the countries in the euro area, which is maybe suboptimal, and something that would potentially be overcome. But this is nothing we, as a central bank, could really address, because it's a national competence at the moment. And if something needs to be changed or should be changed, it's up to the European bodies to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to build on that and just say, find yourself an anchor customer. So find a conservative, traditional, incumbent, slow player, be a government department, a boring large company, and essentially attach yourself to them on the very edge. They get the concept. They have no idea what to do with it, and help them solve a very specific problem. Be very frugal in the problem you choose to solve, and then very gradually use that to expand. It's sort of a symbiotic, develop a symbiotic relationship with a much larger player. And once you solve that problem for that anchor customer, you're ready for a broader market.
Thank you for that advice.
I can only share a little experience and hopefully help you here in Lithuania and elsewhere think about how to approach this problem, because the lack of availability of everyday banking, operational banking services is a definite choke point, and it's been a choke point in this sector for a long time. I come back to what I was saying earlier on about regulatory certainty. The problem for commercial bankers is that regulators, oh dear, I'm one of them, hit them over the head rather hard and penalize them when they make mistakes, particularly in the area of anti-money laundering and countering terrorist financing rules. And it's really difficult for a commercial bank to understand how to take the risk. The risk is a regulatory risk, not a risk of the business or that wants to do business with it. But the regulatory risk, how to match what it knows about dealing with traditional business in terms of anti-money laundering with this new world that it's grappling to understand and that's changing every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And it's a real challenge. Mm-hmm. And so I think my tip for policymakers and legislators is when you start legislating and regulating, focus on the stuff which is supportive rather than the stuff which is stifling, because that actually gives confidence to bankers. So if you provide, for example, our example would be where we provided a licensing regime in Gibraltar, that was designed to give confidence to the financial supply chain, to banks, to be able to do business with customers in the sector. And then to bankers, you want to bring them along that regulatory journey. Explain to them why you're doing what you're doing in bringing in regulation and certainty, and explain to them how that might help them. You can't tell them what to do. You can't tell a commercial bank that it should or shouldn't take a particular risk that may or may not be within its appetite. What you can do is give it the comfort that you're providing the environment. And my tip here is really to policymakers and legislators to be progressive with your legislation and regulation to help support industry safely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We just have enough time for a couple more questions.
Hi, one question for the panel. I'm Vlado co-founder from Slovenia. We've been evaluating up to 100 blockchain companies per month last year, and now we're going into investing, and we have a platform and advisory. And first of all, congratulations on laying such a beautiful foundation for blockchain companies and startups and partnerships in particular. My question for the panel is connected with what do you think about private versus public blockchains? Because we in Slovenia have started talking to also large companies, and the government in particular is very cooperative. And we see that there's a discrepancy between the public blockchain and what it can do, how fast it can scale, built on Ethereum for now and smart contracts, versus private blockchains being developed for large companies. How you see these two evolving and perhaps cooperating in the future? Thanks.
Who would like to take this? Sure.
So again, from my work with CFOs, I think private blockchains are inevitable, simply because if you're a big pharma company, you want to ensure security of your ingredients, and there's say 80 different ingredients going into one drug. That can't go on 100 million public computers, no matter how much you trust that, you know. So you're going to develop your duplicative infrastructure. It's inevitable. Similarly with payments, with invoicing, etc., etc. So it's no bad thing. It's a way of solving the solution. My sense is, it's just conceptually, I see blockchain as a closed form TCP/IP. It's a way of rewiring the internet in a much more secure way, within, you know, records are not easily tampered with, in order to have a lot more control over security and identity of people you're transacting with. So the public blockchain is very helpful for trust among complete strangers, but private blockchain is simply to make sure that the person you're dealing with, particularly on an iterative basis, is the same person since the last transaction. So I think private blockchains are spawning, and they will happen. I'm not sure where and how the private and the public will interact, but I think it's just simply an alternative form of the internet, an alternative structure of the internet that's emerging alongside a much more open but less secure internet we already have.
But that does raise one question. If the whole point was decentralization, transparency, and if you start moving too far to private blockchain, how does it actually differ from, let's say, Microsoft Enterprise or SAP or Oracle or other kind of applications that companies run? What's the edge?
So I think the edge, in my view, and again there'd be lots of views on this, is simply having a stable identity, a trusted, stable identity. So, an example, Lithuania has very successfully introduced the national healthcare records, and it's been one of the few countries that's managed to do that. Again, another fiasco in the UK. We spent £12.1 billion and got nothing for it, right? So, and the difficulty there is citizens demand tremendous privacy around their medical health records. Now, on traditional enterprise systems, that degree of security of data, or privacy of data, and stability, anonymized stability of identity, is very difficult to achieve. Okay. Whereas blockchain can enable efficiency, stability of identity and security simultaneously. It's almost a holy grail it can square.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. I have another sort of controversial question, if you may. No one has raised this, but obviously one of the fascinating stories of Bitcoin last year is just how much energy was consumed to create that security and trust. In fact, somebody told me China alone was consuming as many terabyte hours as the whole of Iberian Peninsula, meaning Spain and Portugal. And Gibraltar taken together. That's a lot of electricity resources used to create trust. And if just a provocative question, if they take it to a logical conclusion, if the entire world were to run on blockchain and that's what was required, at some point we go bankrupt in terms of having available, or we have to look for new energy resource. So that's another, I guess, question, is it to what extent blockchain is going to become a dominant technology, the way that internet search, the way that social media really changed the way we interact, the way we do business, the way we communicate. It really changed. And I guess the big question is blockchain going to change that, or is it just going to be just another nice technology to have, but nothing super revolutionary about it? Does anyone want to? What would you like? Are we about to witness a revolution?
When I started to think about blockchain, it was the beginning of 2013, and I started to believe that blockchain is something which could add to internet a lot of new values. And now I feel that blockchain is they're so important for the world, like internet was in the beginning of 19th. So I'm not sure that from technological perspectives, blockchain will be the same in 5 and 7 years. So the blockchain is just the first step with a lot of beautiful applications over it. But this is the first step. And we can achieve this step number 2, step number 3. But the world, so digitalized, it really needs more deep trust within this digital environment. And I think blockchain is the first step for that. So I believe in blockchain. And I put in my mem, I want to believe, like Mulder from the X-Files. And it's really beautiful technology. It's really beautiful technology with a great future, but it's not the perfect technology because we are living in developing world, and the technology is changing. So we can expect something new, something nice and great in the nearest future.
Or as they say, technology is only as good as the people who use it. Right? So there's the human factor as well.
No, just to add, there are probably better experts than me in the room, but there are also already an evolution of the consensus mechanism, and I think in the interim context they are testing a new one. So as you have said, I mean, we have seen already several evolution of the blockchain. It will continue to evolve. When we talk about blockchain at the Commission, I mean, we surf a little bit on the wave, but we are thinking about blockchain-inspired technology. So we don't see it at blockchain as we know it through the Bitcoin infrastructure. But we see something that will evolve. And indeed, I mean, in the context of a private blockchain, this question of energy consumption is by far less relevant. But indeed, you're right. I mean, if the future of blockchain is to consume so much energy, it would be a problem, for instance, for the Commission to commit in this infrastructure while we have this. We have also other objectives regarding climate change and energy efficiency.
Bring back nuclear power too.
No. So to come back to the previous question regarding public or private blockchain, I mean, there is also an issue that we'll have to solve, and for that also we need to interact with all the stakeholders, is in the public blockchain there is also an issue of governance that should be clarified. If we imagine that we put a lot of public services, doesn't mean on public blockchain, but public services on the blockchain, how we can ensure that we'll deliver those services will be sustainable, we can be reliable for the services if we don't solve this governance approach.
Yeah, and that's actually the risk that I'm seeing, that we can also, there's risk of devolving too many processes and delegating responsibility to artificial intelligence could be quite a risky path, taking to a logical conclusion.
May I comment on that briefly?
Yes,
very briefly. Because at the ECB we prefer really the term DLT rather than blockchain, because what we do is not so much looking at the real blockchain, but we looked at Ethereum, but now also increasingly Hyperledger and Corda and this kind of stuff. Because look at the payment system area. In the payment system area today, everything has to be instant. Processing has to be instant. Everything needs to be settled in the blink of an eye. How can you do that with a standard classic blockchain? It doesn't work because of this proof of work mechanism, because the specific arrangement you have with every 10 minutes a block is built and so on. So the standard blockchain, I think, conceptually designed as a peer-to-peer payment system, will, I think, in the real world never be used as a payment system, because today, I give you an example, in the Euro system, in the community of central banks in the Euro area, we are now building a new instant payment settlement service based on the old-fashioned technology, but we managed to settle within 10 seconds. Compare this to what Bitcoin blockchain can do. I mean, we can do already a lot with existing technology, so we have to find a good DLT in order to improve efficiency here.
Okay, that does.
Tadas Langaitis, Member of Parliament here in Lithuania. I have a probably tough question on the roadmap and timeline for expected regulation. $1 million question for many entrepreneurs probably in the room. What would be your expected roadmap and timeline for regulation from different countries, different institutions, and from different kind of fields like second commodity regulation, etc.? Any thoughts, I think, could be very valuable for everybody in the room. Thank you.
Okay, can I start as an impartial observer without any agendas? I think there's pressure building in the system to do something about this. I think one positive movement I'm seeing, politically speaking, is the Eurogroup discussion. Macron and Merkel are working on some new roadmap for Euro, and there's a desire for harmonization and tax. And I think I hope that this discussion will come up within that framework, because it is an area that requires harmonization between jurisdictions, as you mentioned earlier, right? We cannot have the situation where we're going to compete again. We already have that situation of asymmetrical jurisdictions on taxes, for instance. And I think in this one area, there is a desire to see convergence. And I think the other source of pressure, it's part of a bigger process of what's happening with the banking sector in Europe. I think because I think blockchain is so heavily used by fintech organizations and new fintech, I think my perspective is that the banks are slowly moving towards taking less risk, functioning more as utilities, and I think the startup capital will be provided more by alternative sources. And this is where there's a big hope for Europe, because I think Europe in general has quite weak capital markets compared to the United States, and doesn't have a strong tradition of venture capital. And I think this is the space where blockchain could really make a huge difference. That's my personal view. Not to be attributed to blockchain center.
Thank you. I think for China, I would say another 2 years, because every country's situation is different. But firstly, as our government mentioned, we are very support for the technology blockchain. Like the Ministry of Technology and Information already built a lot of joint labs with the A-list universities and research centers in China. But on the other hand, for ICOs, so at the moment, our government's opinion is they don't think ICO is necessary. ICO is just a way of fundraising I would say fundraising the money to start this business. But token, however, is necessary, because token is the key to create a new ecosystem, to build up new rules for the game. So I would say give our government another 2 years to learn, and I always welcome, our blockchain center in Shanghai and Suzhou can give like blockchain 101 lectures to all the government officials. That's why the blockchain center in Shanghai is actually we got a lot of support from the Shanghai local government. So I think that's a good start. But another 2 years, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you, Leila. And I think
could I just give a perspective on timeline? So I think I promise the last time I'm going to mention Gibraltar, because we're going in a moment. But that's a project that to have our first piece of legislation took 3 years from start to finish. But once we were committed to producing a regulatory framework, it took 12 months from concept, which is a novel, outcomes-focused, principles-based concept, to hitting the statute book. And so this is not something that can just be switched on overnight, but it doesn't have to take years. We're currently working on our token regulations, covering ICOs, secondary markets in tokens, and investment advice in tokens, and that will be done in half the time and four times the scope. So it can be done quickly if there's a will and an enlightenment from government and regulator to do that. Unfortunately, within the EU, at EU level, so as I'm not an EU official, I'll pontificate on this. But I think realistically, we're thinking of 3 to 5 years. If you think about the amendments to the 4th Anti-Money Laundering Directive, they were floated exactly 2 years ago this week. So the demands of the Council to the Commission to formulate an action plan relating to terrorist financing, which was the catalyst for this change, that was published exactly 2 years ago this month. And it was the specific proposals were published by the Commission in the summer of that year, and we're now a year and a half down the line before we reach agreement. And I'm not being critical, I'm just saying it is a slow process. No, I know that, absolutely. I'm not, and if the cryptocurrency part had been detached from the rest, it would have been done a lot sooner. I absolutely agree. But the problem is the machinery, the complexity of the machinery of EU legislation. It takes a bit of time, and that's really what I'm. So this wasn't a criticism or an advert for Gibraltar, but another tip for Lithuania: you may need to consider doing some things at national level if you want to really support the initiative of the ecosystem that you're creating here at the Blockchain Center.
Thank you. On this very positive message, I'm afraid we're out of time. We have a second panel where we can continue our discussion. I think you'll agree this is a great example of what the Blockchain Center is all about: exchanging information, frank discussions, feedback from, and building collaboration. So I'd like you all to thank the panel for joining us today, and now we continue with a short coffee break, for 20 minutes, and then we are pleased to have the case study by NEM Blockchain by Christopher van der Rick, Regional Head Europe and Council Member of NEM Foundation, here in 20 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Very good.
Good. Very well. Excellent stuff. Well done. It was slightly broad, but we covered quite a lot of ground. Yeah. I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to talk. Yeah, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Well done, thank you.
I'm looking for Mr. Ivor from Estonia. Can I ask him to come to the stage?
Per anksti pabėgau? Ai, gerai.
Aš pučiau galvį, dėl to norėjau pabėgti. Trys? Ką turi? Jeigu ką, tai tu darysim, bet jeigu trys. Ne, taip pabandėjai.
Ką, nušovė? Pasidaryk presedą, jeigu ką, tai po to žiūrėsim. Vis tiek dar šviesos iš lauko dar mažiau.
Hello, I would ask everyone to go back to their seats because we'll continue with our program. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to interrupt your conversations. We'll still have plenty of time to network over coffee, but can I please ask everyone to take their seats for the next session? Please kindly return to your seats. Let's see how blockchain community is decentralized, very decentralized. They don't take orders from. Oh, really? Okay. Well, next year we'll do one in Davos. Yeah? We can do one. We can raise the standards. Ar galima paprašyti visų atsisėst Thank you. Okay. Are we ready? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. And I apologize, I have to interrupt your coffee break. We have to move on with our program. And I'm very excited to say we have, now we covered the government perspective, we're moving on to the private sector. And today we're privileged to have Mr. Christoph van der Rek. He's the regional head of Europe and council member of NEM Foundation. I believe most of you in this room already know NEM. It's one of the leaders in the blockchain industry. We're very proud to have them as our partners here, and they have shown great faith and confidence in Lithuania, coming here, I believe now for on a second or even a third trip, and we look forward to a long-term partnership. So just briefly, before I call Christoph, I would like to share a few remarks. Christoph is a founding member of the council member and regional head of Europe NEM Foundation. Since he first learned about blockchain technology, he has been focusing on how blockchain can be implemented in existing businesses as well as the opportunities it facilitates for new businesses. In his role as regional head of Europe, he and his team are responsible for the introduction, education and promotion of the NEM blockchain technologies to industries, governments and academia throughout Europe and beyond. And without further ado, I'm calling upon Mr. van der Rek to share your experience with the blockchain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for interrupting your coffee break, but I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. It's a completely different approach than the previous discussion we had. I'm trying to get it as practical as possible. So if we compare regular systems versus blockchain, we can see that in regular systems usually the business logic is in a data center, as well as the data itself. Immutable data is usually not available in regular systems, and value or the money is usually in the bank. Now, I made a small comparative analysis of three pretty well-known public blockchain platforms, where Bitcoin is actually mainly focusing on the value aspect, and Ethereum is putting most of these categories like business logic data, immutable data, and the value and money aspect, all in the blockchain, which is an aspect that is an approach rather. We all know as smart contracts, and which may be good for some decentralized applications, but for most real-world businesses and use cases, it's not the ideal situation. It's not the ideal approach because it creates a lot of overhead on the processing part, but also on the data part. So NEM is taking a rather different approach where we have our smart asset system, which is focusing more on adoption for real-world businesses, and actually we do more. As you can see in this chart, we reflect more what is done in these real-world businesses and regular systems. So, just as a very brief overview before I will focus on the use cases itself, blockchain allows us to easily allocate and track the ownership of any digital asset. What this digital asset represents is something that we either need to define by programming or whatever, or by backing up the digital asset by some real assets. We can also manage authorizations and authenticate users in their actions. So now off to some use cases. I've tried to make some sense out of use cases by dividing them in 4 categories, where on the horizontal level, I distinguish between monetary systems and non-monetary systems. And vertically, on the left-hand side is basically like a very plain approach, where on the right-hand side, we are talking about use cases that actually benefit from having a life cycle in the asset itself. So basically, this means that we will be updating the assets over their life cycle and giving this an auditable trail and some historic things that we can later query. So actually, the lightest green category here are basically the simplest things to model on a blockchain. So we're talking about commodities, cryptocurrencies, and tickets. And then the non-monetary things, which are actually some very important things that are still easy to understand and pretty easy to achieve. Things like identity and know your customer procedures, licenses, certificates, and voting. And then obviously, since when we are talking about life cycles and similar things, it becomes a little bit more complex, where things like provenance, patents, copyrights can all be managed by blockchain. And then the most complex category is actually the assets that have absolutely no monetary value. Things like governance records, like medical records and maintenance records, but also supply chain management, things like track and trace and similar things. So the application fields, I'm pretty convinced that most people in this room already have a very good understanding of the application fields of blockchain, but I'll quickly go over them. Fintech is obviously the obvious choice, which makes a lot of sense. Healthcare, insurance, logistics, but also obviously production, and governments are obviously also picking up on the potential of blockchain. So I have a couple more slides, which are actually intended to graphically give you an overview how our smart asset system of the NEM blockchain can easily be applied to model these use cases on a blockchain without using smart contracts, or rather we don't like to call them smart contracts, but smart assets, which allow us to still do some automation on a blockchain level, but not as complex as what Ethereum or other smart contract blockchains provide. This is a very basic, very simple fintech example, where obviously the dollar sign doesn't necessarily mean that it's dollar, but it represents something that has a monetary value, which can also be cryptocurrency or something similar, where we just issue a token, we attribute some parameters to it, and then people can basically transact the token. So it's a pretty straightforward use case. Now, if we, in a similar way, if we stop thinking about, or if we think about assets that they can actually represent not just a monetary value, but anything that can be counterfeit or that can have a value to individuals. We can also think about licenses, like driving licenses or whatever licenses, might be a doctor's license or similar things, where it's actually pretty easy to just issue a mosaic, which like is in the NEM ecosystem is our implementation of a token, where again we will attribute some parameters to it and basically send it to the end user. There are ways to ensure that these mosaics cannot be transferred to other people, so basically they're locked in the account, and by attributing these parameters to it, it's pretty easy to define what the token actually represents. Again, since we have the individual here on the right-hand side, that has actually a digital identity, which is in the end its blockchain account. It's a very straightforward process and it's very easy to achieve. In a pretty similar way, we have the ability to let tokens represent the right to vote. So again, on the right-hand side, we have a user which has been identified, where on the left-hand side, typically you would have the ability to like represent a government or something that, or like in corporate governance or something similar. So again, we would issue tokens and assign some attributes to them that will represent whether, like, what is this voting about, when does it expire, and similar things. And we give the user to send this token on to accounts. So basically, there would be a yes account, a no account, but this can also be a dozen accounts that represent actual specific choices for a voting process. So as again, NEM allows us to generate these tokens in such a way that they cannot be transferred to people that are not allowed to vote, or we can lock them basically in the account and make sure that they can only be transferred once. So people that would transfer them to another account would basically render them useless. So by simply allowing this identified user to send the mosaic to one of these predetermined accounts, we can afterwards easily show at what certain time specific people decided which choices they made. So you have an auditable trail, and it's pretty easy to achieve. For things that are a little bit more complicated, like provenance, in this example, I basically just took a diamond. It may be a little bit more complicated because for some certain situations, you might want to follow the entire life cycle process of the diamond. For instance, from the instance it has been mined throughout the process of the diamond being completely cut and evaluated for its what they call the 4 Cs. So in this case, because of the fact that we are talking about an use case that has a life cycle attributed to it, we need to use a different mechanism than just a token. So in this case, in this instance, we would use what we call a container asset, which actually allows us to combine several attributes together. So this container asset would allow us to put a multitude of assets into this container and basically update the whole life cycle of the digital asset. Since NEM has a multi-signature feature that can be updated, it will be possible to it will enable us to at a certain time transfer the ownership to an individual, while not having the issue that the individual will, like the account will be linked to the individual account forever. So as a result, once the new owner has ownership of the digital asset, the container asset, it will also have the ability later on to transfer this to, for instance, a new owner, while we maintain the entire life cycle process of the diamond, and we have full provenance back to the source, maybe the diamond mine or whatever. This is something that's actually pretty easy to achieve, where you would do this in a similar way on a smart contract. It would be rather cumbersome and pretty complex to achieve. As a last use case example, I chose a track and trace example. where we are using again the similar concept of these container assets, which may not only be used for just tracking one instance, but maybe it might be a full batch, a production batch that will be shipped in its entirety and later distributed. But to keep it a little bit just within the confinements of this 15-minute presentation, to keep it a little bit easier, we just chose here a use case which allows us to have a track and trace from the production facility to the instance where the user has actual ownership of the asset. So here in this first instance, this container asset would be created, and the owner or the buyer would be provided with the data that links to the container asset. So as soon as the owner or the buyer makes an actual buy, like a purchase, he will be able to look at this account, which will contain all the updates throughout the process. So as soon as the production facility forwards the package to the transportation company, there will be a transaction sent to this account, and we have full traceability because the owner will have a link to that specific account. So since the owner will be able to know, we can also again put here some metadata in this transaction, which will allow us to easily identify the location of that package at a specific time. Similar, when the transportation company transfers it to the mailman or whoever is delivering the package to the door, we can again update this package, and we can do this as many times as we would like, until finally the package is delivered to the user. Whereas a last step, we would be able to again link this container asset to the owner who has the actual package in his possession. Obviously, this is only the beginning. This is just a very basic use case, but as an example how blockchain would enable additional new business models and also a way broader application of cross-application storing of data and things like that. The production facility would also be able to send later on a warranty token to that container asset, and afterwards we would be able to identify what are the applications of the warranty and similar things. So actually this is more or less a couple examples that show you, by not using smart contracts but rather just using assets that have some automation features on the blockchain, with some creative application of these features, you can achieve in a very, very convenient way some really interesting use cases. Obviously, this is only a very, very short and very brief example of a few pretty easy use cases, but there's obviously a lot more possibilities, and we are happy to be working on some of those here already in Europe, and I'm looking forward to work together with Blockchain Center here in Vilnius to make sure that we can apply the NEM technology in some really interesting use cases. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Christoph. I think all of you will agree this has been a fascinating example of how the traditional industries here in Lithuania could use blockchain technology. And I think one of the exciting developments for me personally is our cooperation with the Confederation of Industrialists, and I will definitely like to invite them to take a closer look at these solutions. Now, moving on, We also have a second case study presented by Mr. Thomas Soffinson, co-founder of 2030 and the Pillar Project, also a partner in blockchain technology here in Vilnius. We met, I believe, first time in London at the Blockchain Summit.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was almost impossible to speak to you. There were 2,000 people who wanted to talk to you. And also, I then visited your headquarters in London. They also have a Rise London.
Mm-hmm.
We have Rise Vilnius here. And I saw that apparently every week the number of people double, right?
Yeah.
It's a very fast-moving environment, very exciting. So today, without further ado, over to you and share your experience with blockchain.
Thanks so much.
Okay,
I don't need.
right.
Thank you.
Very good.
Hello, everyone. So first of all, I would like to say thank you for the invitation by the Blockchain Center here at Vilnius. Really, really good and really glad to be here. Thank you for the hospitality. Before I move to what we're going to talk about, I really want to ask two simple questions. How many people here have actually bought a cryptocurrency or a token? Woo! Lithuania is blockchain. Yeah, nice. Okay, how many people have invested in ICOs? Okay, maybe I don't need to speak. Very nice. So I'm going to introduce you to what is Pillar. And Pillar is all about you, right? It's all about helping you take back your data, right? And I'm going to explain you how we're going to do it, how we're going to replace account, and how we're going to replace apps. Right? It's the first time maybe you hear about it. And then I'm going to introduce you to some wallet. Okay, what is the wallet? And some business cases around that wallet. Right? Here you go. So a bit about Pillar. Pillar has done our ICO in July 17, so last year. And we were very lucky to have a lot of contributors, about 10,000, almost 10,000 contributors that have provided us enough funds to be fully funded today. So we're very lucky. And we have designed the Pillar project to be a foundation. It's a gift to the world because it's all about helping you reclaim your data. Okay, we're going to have a first release of the wallet this quarter 18, so we're very excited about that, and I hope everyone will join our newsletter and keep updating, right? And it's gonna be very exciting because again, it's all about you, right? So there are some icons here of logos here of very important companies, and again, these are just examples. It's not about only these companies. Anyone can tell me what is the common denominators of all the logos you see here? Anyone? Take a guess. Anyone? Yes, sir? First of all, yes, you're correct because they all of them have been built on the premise of owning your data, whether you like it or not. Your data doesn't belong to you, okay? These companies are here to have your data, monetize it, and sell it to the highest bidder. But I'll tell you another thing, very important. All of these have been hacked. All of these have been hacked. And it's not only about these, there are many others. Pretty much every week you hear about a new company that has been hacked. And why? Because they're not leveraging blockchain. Because they're all working on a centralized architecture of the past. They're not using the best practices of security, right? And that's exactly what we with Pillar were going to change. We're going to put the user, you, right? Each one and every one of us, at the center, help you reclaim your data, okay? And make sure that your data is redundant, right? And spread so there is no single point of failure. And we're taking security and safety and privacy extremely seriously. So we are putting you own your data, you control your life. Right? And that's the concept of no accounts and no apps. We're going to replace all your accounts. Right? All your accounts. Each one of us has hundreds, tens and hundreds of accounts. Email accounts, bank accounts, right? Many, many types of accounts. Why do you need all these accounts, right? Each one of them is a security hole. Each one of them is a single point of failure, right? We're going to replace all these accounts with one pillar wallet, your wallet, where you're going to control your data, okay? And we're going to do so by also replacing apps. Aha. How many apps you have in your phone, in your Android, on your iPhones? Dozens, right? Right? You have dozens. They're not, are they talking? Hundreds, maybe, right? Are they talking to each other? Kind of, right? Right? So what we want to do is we want to replace those apps with services as you're in the center, and we're going to tie all those services into you so you can have a much better experience. Everything is going to talk to each other, and you're going to have a much better user experience. So here is a bit about the wallet. Again, it's a long journey. We're beginning at the end of this quarter. We're going to begin by being the best crypto and token wallet, and this token is going to evolve and will become the dashboard of your digital life, right? And all of this is going to, I hope, toward the summer, when we reach the personal data locker, we're going to become this platform for services that will replace apps. You're going to have 4 levels of registration on the Pillar wallet. One is anonymous. You can extend your personal information. We're going to have some verification. So some people are aware here about KYC, AML, and all of that. These are necessary processes in order to access more advanced services, as well as our accredited or qualified investors' information to access, such as more sophisticated, I would say, financial product. Some of our business cases. So as I said, the first token wallet that we're going to launch at the end of this quarter is going to help you safely store, safely manage, and provide wallet-to-wallet transactions. So you'll tell you, okay, what's the difference? Well, the difference is that, as I see many users raise their hand using wallets, how is the user experience today? Right? Difficult, right? It's not very user-friendly. It's right? So we're going to replace, we're going to reinvent all that. We're going to bring this decentralization revolution to the 99% of people out there that have no idea what we here are talking about blockchain. That's what the Pillar project is about, right? The second wallet after the token wallet is going to be the ICO wallet. We're going to reinvent the way we are investing in ICOs. How was the process of investing in ICOs? Scary, huh? Everybody use scary? Shaked a bit? Tell me the truth, come on, right? It's super scary experience, right? We're going to reinvent it. We're going to make it much safer, much more secure, in a much easier way that will avoid making mistakes, right? And on top of that, we're going to provide a legal, compliant way to use the ICO, the fantastic innovation that is the ICO, to invest in equity tokens, okay? And we're working right now with all regulators, and I'm welcoming also to speak to other regulators here to provide and present our very innovative framework to make it compliant and regulated. We're working right now with the FCA, and we hope to work with many others. Toward the summer, as I said, we're going to launch the Pillar for Consumers. The Pillar for Consumers is what we call internally the grandma wallet. Why the grandma wallet? Because we want even my mother to use it. Believe it or not, you haven't met my mother, right? But my mother knows nothing about blockchain, and she probably never will, okay? We need to make it extremely easy for users in order to use this fantastic new technology, right? This is where we become a platform, and offers start coming to you as opposed of being in siloed app that are trapping your data and monetizing it, okay? So these ideas of services coming to you as opposed to the apps. And in 2 to 3 years, I hope will become what we call the WIDOS. Anyone knows what WIDOS is? It's your data operating system, right? We're gonna begin to become our own entire environment, right? That is your data. You're not replacing the current system with Pillar. You're replacing it with your data. We don't have your private key. We don't have access to your information, even if I'm forced, right? Even if I'm forced to give it, we don't have it. That's the premise of GDPR. We are also launching the Pillar for Business. We're going to work with businesses to help them extract the user information, to decrease the liability, and to help customers manage their own data, and most importantly, to comply with GDPR. Anyone knows what GDPR is? It's a global data protection regulation. It's coming in this May. We're not talking about something that is going to happen in 3 years. It's now. It's happening now, right? And something that we're very passionate about is about talking to countries as well as more generally to Europe about the Pillar for Citizen. You're going to have a wallet, a citizen, a personal data locker, secure personal data locker that is going to have all your citizen services and give you access to all your citizen service from one location that is stored and redundant with no single point of failure on the blockchain. This is how this project is enabled by blockchain, and this is why we're here at the center of Blockchain for Vilnius, right? That is going to improve, I hope, the connection between the citizens and the public administration, between the citizens and their government, right? And I think this is something that we all want, and we have heard already very good comments about that, right? That's it. Helping you, taking back your data.
Microphone to work? Okay, very good. Well, yet again, a compelling, fascinating example of how blockchain technology can empower the people. One idea we discussed actually with Pillar is, maybe some of you know, our biggest structural challenge in Lithuania is that we have a lot of emigrations. We have a lot of people living abroad. In total, 600,000 of Lithuanians are now living overseas. And one beautiful idea to connect the citizens who are currently in London or Dublin is to have a citizen wallet. To basically, I would love to have access to all the information that relates to me as a citizen, be it my medical record, social security records, my etc., assets, liabilities, and I think we discussed it that it's quite possible to do it with this technology. So that's one very fascinating direction in which we hope to take this discussion. Okay, and now we have a third speaker, very, very proud to call on Mr. Sonic Jean, please, if I pronounce it correctly. Sonic is also very well known in the industry. He's founder of ValueNet Capital, a blockchain-focused venture capital fund. He also heads 20 Nations League of Blockchain, an international NGO focused on bridging blockchains and cryptocurrency communities. Thank you, very proud to have you. And thank you for coming.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Sonic Zhang, and I'm the founder of ValueNet Capital. I'll tell you a bit about myself first. I actually started in the cryptocurrency or blockchain industry very late. I only got in last August. And I bought my first Bitcoin in August. And then that is for paying to get a roadshow tour in the blockchain center in Melbourne. To Martin, yeah, exactly Martin. So that is when I realized that the cryptocurrency is much better than any international remittance you can have. And that's when I decided to jump in right away. And so the blockchain group of that time is my client. I used to have an internet company where we do global marketing for Chinese internet giants like Tencent or Ctrip. And they asked me to do a global roadshow tour for them. So in 10 different countries and within a month. And we did it. And we did it very successfully and with the help of Martin, of course. And they really loved the job we did. And I approached them to acquire us. Basically, if they don't, we would just go there anyway, because we just found out that this industry has so much potential, that blockchain technology is so disruptive, it will just change the world. I think every generation has their chance of going to the top. I think this is our generation's opportunity. And yeah, and so since then I've been working in that group to help them to do global marketing. Basically, after the 4th of September ban, maybe every one of you know, the Chinese government released an announcement saying that Bitcoin trading is illegal in China, and it is the reason that Bitcoin is not a central bank recognized currency. So you can't use Bitcoin to buy something else. And ICO is basically using Bitcoin to buy tokens. So they banned that. And of course you can't buy a coffee using Bitcoin. It's just like you can't buy a coffee using gold, right? And since then I found out that the blockchain technology is actually a ledger technology. And ledger has been around since the 2,000 years ago, like the tribal ages, where the chief of the tribe, when they hunt for a boar or a deer, he will decide whose family will get the leg, whose family will get the head. And that is basically a ownership of something. It's a ledger technology. So since then, the record of ledger technology has been improved. Before it used to be writing on the wall. And when the paper came out, you can write it on a paper. And when the computer came out, you can write it in a spreadsheet. But the core of the ledger technology never changed. It is still a centralized technology. But everything changed since 2009 when Bitcoin came out. We have a ledger where everyone can write on it and no one actually owns it. So for the centralized ledger, say you own a company, right? The company structure, the major shareholder, you are the owner of that company. You have the right to write on that ledger. You own the right of the ledger, so you have the total power of that company. But for a decentralized ledger, everyone can write on it. You just need to download a open source code to run it on your computer. And everyone can do transaction on it without any regulation or third-party monitoring. And I think it's going to change the whole industry, the whole fintech industry first. So Bitcoin is only the first product of blockchain technology, obviously. And Ethereum and some other project came after that. So what we do in ValueNet Capital is we invest into cryptos and we invest into tokens as well. So basically we will do tradings on future and spot. We hedge the risks of future and spot tradings. We took 40% of our total holdings in hedge tradings. We make generally 50 to 100% gains annually just through hedge trading because the market is fluctuating so quickly. And we do spot trading for secondary market, basically buying and selling tokens and cryptos. We generally do 50% gains every quarter. And the third part is for ICO investment. And we make sure that if we fail every ICO investment we make, we will still be making money for the whole fund, more than any traditional VC can ever do. So, but we choose the absolute best project to invest for ICOs. And we do that through our global network of advisors. that's been feeding us all the great projects they come across. We have a great team in Sydney that does tech review for us. They will look at the smart contract, the GitHub code that they released, and they actually dig into the different personal background of the tech team to see if they are qualified to actually deliver what they have promised. And we have a review team in China, that's my team. They will produce a report for every project we come across. We provide it to the board of directors of the Vilnius Capital, and we decided if we want to invest or not. We basically invest $1 to $5 million US for different projects based on their quality, their potential, and yeah, we did very successfully. I mean, our first case is Power Ledger. It's an Australian project. They did power trading. It's a centralized platform, and the team is very strong. It's been proven very successful, and we did some huge investment after that. China actually is not very exciting right now. It's not very exciting for you. I don't think you should consider investing to any Chinese ICOs right now because the regulation is kind of risky. You don't know what's going to come out next. They might just ban all the ICOs, and then your money will be lost. So don't invest into Chinese ICOs right now. That's my advice. And secondly, I mean, we don't ever invest into Chinese ICOs until the regulations actually came out with something clear and have some clear rules on how they want to trade ICOs. So what we're doing right now in China, not what we're doing, what the Chinese teams are doing, I mean the Chinese ICO projects are doing, is they don't do a public raise. They don't do ICOs. They just do pre-sale, and they just get listed. So they just raise some money through pre-sale, and they just get listed, and they raise money through secondary market. That's what we're dealing with, the regulations, and we don't know what's going to come next. And the exchanges, all the Chinese exchanges, are going all around the world to do their different exchanges in a different part of the world. I think pretty much the exchange business have been, I couldn't say dominated, but definitely hugely influenced by the Chinese teams. Like Binance is being the top in the crypto-to-crypto exchanges. It's coming from a Chinese team. They are now moving to Tokyo as their headquarters. And several other exchanges have been running around all the world to find a good place to stay. But not all of them are very good. So, and the regulators, they actually have been discussing about blockchain constantly. I think the best outcome that we're going to see, what we hope to see, is actually the government came out to say they want to release a central bank-backed token. Basically, it's pegged to the Chinese RMB, and they will issue that token to you every year, so you can buy, say, 1 million tokens every year. And then if you want to invest into projects or whatever, or trade on the secondary market, then go ahead. So they release the chips, right? If you want to gamble, they give you the chips. But you have to cash out through them. You can't cash out through other ways. You have to come back to the central bank to cash out, so they can control the in and out of the fiat currencies. I think it will be a very smart way to do it, because they will be increasing the liquidity of Chinese RMBs dramatically. So this Chinese RMB will become the most acceptable currency in the world, at least in the crypto world, right? A government-backed cryptocurrency is much better than a company-backed cryptocurrency like USDT. I think there's quite a lot of fraud right now about USDT, and because someone have failed to cash out for $1 million. And there's different solutions to actually create a more stable cryptocurrency without dealing with banks. I'm looking at some of those projects, and I think there might be a better solution to do that. So, yeah, from a Chinese perspective, I would wish that China to actually stand up and become the first, but obviously Lithuania can try to take them, beat them, right? But I think it's going to be hard because you are still in the European market. you have to go through the European Parliament. So, but I think opening of a blockchain center here is definitely a huge opportunity, because you will attract all the talents, all the great projects to come here and to do the business here. We increase the job opportunities here, and bring all the incomes here. I think this will be a great help to boost the fintech innovations in Vilnius and in Lithuania. I think, I might just do some questions, because I didn't prepare a PowerPoint. I think every time I have a PowerPoint for this event, but I decided to not do it, because everything is just more exciting when you do it unscripted, right? So let's ask some random questions. I will see what do you have interest about China?
This is more of a statement than a question. I think regulatory challenges actually present opportunities for some other companies. We now are building the largest development house that is outsourcing blockchain technology and outsourcing blockchain developers to the rest of the world in China, because the ICO and exchange bans mean that everybody can stop messing around and get down to work. So I would like to highlight that China is still a very attractive place to build a blockchain company. Just don't mention the C word.
Hi, so if the very promising Chinese startup want to do ICO, but of course not in China, how can we do?
Of course you can do it. You just need to register in a different country and find a stakeholder. Find a majority stakeholder, preferably be a foreigner, because you were taking regulation risk. If you be a Chinese man running a company outside of China, doing an ICO, that is still a risk. As Sam said, what some of the Chinese technical teams are doing is they are working with government, because they can't issue a token, they can't do a ICO, so they just do outsourcing projects for the government to run basically maybe housing rights or the intellectual property rights projects, where they build into a decentralized platform to increase the productivity. I think that is what the Chinese government is allowing the companies to do in China right now. And the big company is actually getting a much better advantage. I don't know if you noticed this, when the announcement for the 4th of September came out, they actually did an announcement the right next day saying that they are not banning blockchain technology. They are supporting blockchain technology. And so they give you some examples saying Alibaba is doing something like this, Baidu is doing something like that, and Tencent is doing something similar. So basically saying all the small companies, don't think about it, just come to the big companies and they will be doing it for us. And they are working with us. I think that is not fair to the industry, but you have to deal with it. ICOs as a tool is still very effective. I think I love the innovation of ICO. Just the idea of doing a crowdfunding through a global scale, it's unimaginable. You can have so much potential for dealing with a world-class problem. I think what I see ICO is good at is that you have to have a big dream. You can't just be solving a local problem in a very niche industry, because it's too small. You're competing with, in a global scale, you're competing for a limited resource that is Bitcoin and Ethereum. So you have to think about every ICO as your competitor. No matter what industry you are in, because you're competing for a limited resource, and you have to think it in a global scale. I would encourage Vilnius project, if ever you want to do one, to think about global at the very beginning. You can't be solving a local problem by doing an ICO because it will be not recognized by the global market. You have a big dream, and it's a problem for everyone. It has to be relatable to everyone so that they feel comfortable investing in it. They won't invest in anything they don't understand or it's nothing to do with them, right? Then you can solve some great problems like world-class problems with the support from everyone in the world. So basically someone from Africa can invest into your project, and some royal family from England, if they ever have a Bitcoin, can invest into it as well. So there's no difference for the individual investors. I think that will create crazy opportunities for future projects to have. So yeah, that is my remark for the industry. Thank you very much. Oh, there's additional questions. There.
Okay. Can I have a question because I have microphone?
Okay. One question. Yeah.
Okay, so now China is regulating the ICOs and flotation of cryptocurrencies, and there are the rumors, or let's say preliminary announcement, that China might regulate the mining, and take into account that at least Bitcoin mining, more than half now is mining facilities are located in China. What do you see? How do you think the industry of mining will evolve?
Yeah, actually, I can answer some of that. I think what has been happening in China is that the mining companies are announcing, they are claiming to be a cloud server company in China to receive government support, government subsidies. They are getting cheaper electricity. They are getting subsidies from the government for running a cloud server company, but instead they are doing mining. That's what is tricky in China. So right now the government is taking away their subsidies and taking away their cheaper electricities, basically forcing them out of China. It's not banning them, it's forcing them out of China. So that is what's been happening. I think most of the Chinese mining companies, if they can't get the cheap electricities, they will just move out. It's not economically good for them to stay in China.
So you believe that they will just take equipment and go out to Canada, Russia, somewhere else?
Yeah, if they can. Yeah, they want to. They're doing that. Actually, Sam wants to answer some question about that.
Yeah, so we're the largest shareholder in BW.com. We're a mining equipment manufacturer as well. And the equipment game around deploying of facilities depend on how cheap of an access of electricity you have. Now, there are still considerable hydroelectric dams that are not connected to the China grid. These stranded assets are still empowering a lot of mining operations in China, and that's not going to stop anytime soon. So mining in China is going to continue, and it's just that there were some illegitimate players in the ecosystem that tricked local government into getting government incentives that are getting kicked out.
Okay. I'm sorry to have to cut this really fascinating discussion. We're slightly running behind our schedule, but clearly we must have a separate maybe day on just to discuss China. And it's very obvious to all of you who know us that the Blockchain Center Vilnius, our strategy is to build a long-term relationship with Shanghai and Melbourne, and to cater to clients, Chinese companies that want to do business in Europe. So we're very happy to build this relationship. And thank you, Sonic, for sharing your insights. Now, this is the panel you probably all have been waiting for. We have a moderator, a founder, Mr. Zinon Tony G. Antanas Guoga, member of European Parliament, and serial entrepreneur. He needs little introduction. And then we have, I'd like to call upon our panelists, Ms. Arminta Salagienia. She's the Vice President and Head of Security Services at NASDAQ. Thank you for joining us. We also have Mr. Ashley Campbell-Cook, who is a Business Development Lead at Quadra. Thank you for joining us. We have Mantas Katinas. He's last year's hero who attracted a lot of companies to Lithuania. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We have our partner and our esteemed guest, Mr. Long Wong. He's president of the NEM Foundation. Thank you for coming back to Vilnius. I hope you're going to be a regular guest here at the Blockchain Center. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we have also Mr. Daniel Barr, who's the chairman and founder of BitForward. Thank you. And last but not least, we also have Mr. Thomas Soffinson, who's you already heard, is the co-founder of 2030 and Pillar Project. So Tony, over to you.
It's great to have this discussion, and I'd probably like to open up with Arminta, because NASDAQ is a massive company with their massive offices and here in Lithuania. You've created so many jobs, and we'd love to know what you think is going on with blockchain over at NASDAQ.
Thank you, Antanas, and good afternoon, everyone. I feel very energized, to see such an engaged audience, and absolutely applaud to the team, yourself and Paulius and others for, inviting and getting so many guests to come over. But at the same, it's also really a humbling experience, I can tell you, given the level of expertise and knowledge in the room. Back to your question. NASDAQ is very much engaged with blockchain and DLT. We started experimenting together with our partners and business and technology clients some years ago, and now see the beginnings of a shift, from validating technology into real deployment in production and also some commercialization cases. So as probably most of you know, we operate and we are part of the financial markets. So how do we approach and look for the use cases? First of all, we actually look at the pain points in the existing value chain, where we have many intermediaries, where we have a lot of manual processing, where we have complex workflows which drive cost and risk. And do we see the merits of the DLT, which can help us address those pain points? Why I think it's also good really to start with these spaces, because you are then in a much better position to attract collaboration, and interest of the ecosystem, because I think blockchain is very much about collaboration and about what you can do in partnership. So just to share a few examples, and now I think when we turn back a little bit and see our journey in the past 3 years, I would say it's also possible to see that we are building up the capabilities, so they've become kind of layered. It's like building a house. So the first use case, which we had and started with POC, MVP, and then finally got into production, is called NASDAQ Private Market. And it's deployed in San Francisco, in the US. The market for private shares, for private company shares, pre-IPO, or maybe some that would never IPO, actually has been really pen and paper based, or at best spreadsheet based. And even the fundraising was run on the spreadsheet and very inefficient, notary involved, legal involved, books involved. So the DLT was applied and powered the platform that NASDAQ created called Link, basically to use blockchain to do immutable record keeping for those shares, and also record any movements in the ownership of the shares. So that is in production. Now, last year we partnered with Citi to create an integrated payment solution on blockchain. So basically got cash into the private market, and used blockchain to power really straight through payment processing. Then another use case, just to mention, actually a very recent one, in partnership with our technology client, Swiss Exchange 6. We created a POC for the issuance settlement and DVP settlement solution for structured products. And this has now been very successfully tested actually with the community, with the market participants. So let's see what the next steps will be. So just to wind back a little bit, you know, record keeping of the shares, trading, issuance, settlement, we are kind of building up, you know, the parts of the value chain. And now in January, we started a project together with South African Central Securities Depository, Straight, and we'll be building a proxy voting solution for the South African market, which actually will be based on the POC we did in Estonia with our issuers and clients there. So I have more, but I will stop, not to use all the airtime.
Arminta, thank you very much. You didn't tell us how massive you are in Lithuania. It's like your headquarters. Tell us how many people, how many square meters. I mean, we're so blessed to have people like you here in Lithuania who are driving some of the biggest and probably one of the biggest companies in the world to Vilnius to make the headquarters. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Very kind words. Yeah, so actually NASDAQ is not really a big company in terms of the number of employees. You know, we have like 5,000 employees globally, but of course it's an iconic brand, you know, which is known worldwide, and very much we attribute ourselves to fintech. So sorry guys, you know, the startuppers and all the disruptors, if you don't like us to be fintech, but we think we are have the fintech mindset and the ambition. And we're not afraid, actually, to, you know, even transform the businesses we are in and ride on the mega trends. NASDAQ in Vilnius has now 350 people. So one of the global technology and business competence centers is here. It's the second largest office in Europe after Stockholm, and third largest actually in the world for NASDAQ, so really significant. We run European markets out of Vilnius, actually across all asset classes, equities, derivatives, commodities, fixed income, and have a lot of competences here. So sometimes when JP or, you know, Goldman Sachs need interaction with NASDAQ European markets, and they you know, call or email our staff, they probably few realize that they are talking to someone based in Vilnius. And then we also have developers and testers and engineers, so really a big technology team, including a small but very creative and bright blockchain team. So the projects that I mentioned, for example, like let's take city payment solution. So the bigger share of the development work and also actually the tasks that were related to deploying it in the cloud and resolving some of the you know, real issues were done by Lithuanian engineers based in our office. And 6 project, again, the issuance and settlement of the structured products for the Swiss market. Again, Vilnius team very much involved and part of the solution. And now the guys just got back from South Africa, so Straight project again.
Fantastic. Well, we're blessed to have you because there's so many people now we can hire for Lithuanian startups, right? You're teaching them the ways of the world, and then now they're ready to do Lithuanian projects. Bigger than NASDAQ, hopefully, but you're doing an amazing job, right?
Anything for the better good, and shared good, of course.
Thank you so much for coming in, and I know you're not feeling great, so we really appreciate your time and all your efforts that you do. You know, another thing that everyone is always concerned about is security, right? Things go wrong. We just had a massive incident 2 days ago or yesterday with some exchange in Japan that went a little bit silly. But things happen, right, all around the world, and it's been happening for years. Thefts, hacks, frauds. Blockchain has a lot of interesting aspects that protects people from that, or at least we can see a chain. And we have a foremost expert here in Ashley who will give us all the benefits of the blockchain and how we're all going to be very safe and secure.
No small fee. No small fee there, just to explain all the benefits. Can you hear me?
No.
Oh, hello? There you go.
Yeah.
So no small feat, just to explain all the benefits of blockchain in security. But yeah, happy to go ahead. So I guess in the 21st century, we're ever increasingly living in a digital age. So we transfer value, we kind of socialize, and a lot of the work we do is actually digital. It's all online, or at least on servers at our work. But actually, kind of our security hasn't really caught up with this, as we've seen from the crazy amounts of hacks that we're seeing, both in the cryptocurrency world, but also in just the data service world. And now we're even seeing it in the hardware world with the new Intel hack, where you can bleed out memory. So we really need our technology that we're using to catch up to the way we're living. It's all well and good having, we've got great bricks and mortar steel safes that can store our physical documents, but we need something for the 21st century that's comparable to how we live. And so kind of really going off what has already been said here today with the great work that Pillar's doing around protecting individuals' identity, but I guess just to take a step back and to think about how does blockchain actually do that. Realistically, it can give you this, using the simple encryption methods, so like using public key infrastructures and using like the encryption like SHA-256, which is pretty standard with Bitcoin. You can encrypt data, but the real benefit comes when you can give access to decrypt data. So like you can self-syndicate all your data. I can hold all the data that's pertinent to me, as is kind of shown by the Pillar platform, which looks great. But then say when my bank wants to check that I actually live where I say I live, or that I earn what I say I earn, they can request timed access to that data for a set period of time, which is one great benefit of a blockchain. And essentially you're moving from this world where you have kind of, in a way, the old world is really the decentralized world, because you've got all these decentralized databases, Excel spreadsheets, servers that aren't really talking to each other, because there isn't the infrastructure to allow them to talk to each other in a trusted way. But with blockchain, you've kind of got this, obviously we call it is the decentralized ledger, but in a way you can create a safe centralized database whereby you can have multiple parties, multiple nodes, all speaking the same language, all speaking on the same database, but in a safe way. And then so just to kind of go on more slightly, really an application of blockchain is kind of really only useful in a few cases. I think we've seen, maybe right now you can see a lot of hype around blockchain, as you've seen with the Long Island iced tea company, who changed their name to the Long Blockchain Company, and their shares rose 427%. And they were going to buy a mining rig, and they've now backed out of that. And the SEC at Davos recently issued a warning saying, look, if you're just going to put blockchain on the front of your company ticket just to boost your shares, then I mean, we're going to come after you. It's a bit naughty. So I think a key part of all our jobs, but particularly my job working in the space, is making sure that the right use cases of blockchain are used and utilized. And realistically, it's where you've got multiple parties all working on the same data set, the same database, and you want them all to have kind of safe access, but whereby you can also see who's viewing what data and when and where they're seeing it. I was going to say, it was a great point earlier from, I think it was Sam, is it? Just saying that, with this ban in China on the ICO markets, we can actually start doing real work in blockchain. I think again, a lot of the ICOs haven't really generated much value for investors, and some ICOs have been fraudulent. I think the real value in all this technology, for me personally, I think is in the underlying blockchain technology as opposed to the cryptocurrency. But I'm sure as a panel we can debate that.
Thank you very much for those insights. And I would like to introduce my good friend now, I would say, the president of the NEM Foundation, Lon Wong, who has been a really massive supporter of Lithuania and even Lithuanian basketball. You know, we have to really thank him, as it was the first move ever, I think, in crypto, where a basketball team, a professional, famous basketball team, was sponsored by cryptocurrency. So I think there's a lot of very happy people, and the money that came in, over 400,000 euros, is a significant contribution. So definitely the people of Vilnius, the fans, are extremely grateful to you, and I can definitely relay that message. But apart from that, you're doing a lot of other great things with the NEM Foundation all over the world. But there's always challenges in business, integration. Even in Vilnius, if we want to integrate so people could buy tickets, they could buy bus transport, you know, the reality doesn't always move as fast as our dreams and imagination, especially mine, right? And so you know, we have to have dreams, right? We have to have goals, but the reality of things always takes us a step back. You know, it's just like 2 steps forward and hopefully just 1 step backwards, and then we go forward. So, Honourable President, please tell us what you think, where the challenges are, where the future lays. How will the NEM Foundation propel the world forward?
2 steps forward, 1 step back. That sounds like a dancing step to me. Yeah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think that one of the biggest challenge that I face, and therefore the foundation faces, is that there's this issue, a two-pronged. One issue that is most important, that is hindering the progress of the development of the blockchain technology, is regulators. And the blurring distinction between the use of blockchain as a solution versus the use of blockchain to transact value. So, for example, if I were to implement a solution that uses, say, Oracle database, right? The regulators would not bother much about it. In fact, if you look at the Basel, you know, lots of the Basel documents, nothing is mentioned about the database that's being used, like Oracle or Microsoft. But why do regulators pay so much attention to anyone using blockchain as a technology to drive the financial services? This is one thing where there is an acute lack of understanding of the use of blockchain technology to actually drive financial systems. And they often relate this to a crypto coin. It's, you know, it's tainted in a way. It's been used for money laundering, terrorism. But if you really look at it seriously, the amount of crypto coins out there is about $500 billion today. There are trillions of dollars that's floating out there that have more problems in terms of money laundering, terrorism, and whatnot. Why is there such a problem? It's a lack of understanding. It's a fear that has been put onto us for whatever reason. So this is the biggest hindrance that we have moving forward, empowering the financial industry. But if you look at it in what Amanda was saying, you know, I wrote a paper something like 1.5 years ago, and I did say that at the end of the day, if you use blockchain, this is a classic example of a good use case where it is very controversial as well as very radical. If you use blockchain as a solution to power up a stock exchange, you really do not need settlement, you do not need any share registry, CSD, and a host of intermediaries that are required today to sustain or to make up the ecosystem of current stock exchanges. And if you look at the history of the stock exchanges, it was developed more than 400 years ago, and it hasn't changed. The process didn't change other than making it electronic. But if you use blockchain technology, you don't need all those. It's a mindset shift. It's an entirely different paradigm altogether. And because of that, it is hard for us to change for many reasons. One is acceptance, coming to terms with it. Second is a lot of jobs. A lot of huge companies like the banks will lose a substantial portion in settlement. The brokers will be gone. A huge value chain would have been removed. And we are talking about an industry that goes into the trillion of dollars. No one would want to change that. That's the reality of it. And that's the biggest hindrance. But if there's an Uberization of such an exchange, and the fact that such things, today the world is very much smaller than yesterday in as far as electronic transactions and things like that is concerned. So if it is an Uberization of such an industry where I could offer without limits and without bounds from one country to another country using the blockchain technology, this is going to change the world, and as far as stock exchange is concerned. And as far as settlement is concerned, payment settlement is concerned, it's the same issue that we are facing, hindrance, through regulators as well as existing players in the industry that are not ready to move forward. So again, it will require Uberization as well. When I mean Uberization, I mean smaller players that come on board that make use of the blockchain technology to drive the financial services. So apart from there, this is very skewed. You know, we have Thomas talking about protection of data. Again, we could use blockchain for a host of other industries where you do not need to be regulated. One of them is, for example, Internet of Things, where you can actually store raw data, proof of records. Records could be personal records or land registry, car registration, medical records, all sorts of records that you can actually put it onto the decentralized storage system that is powered by the blockchain technology, that is immutable, irreversible, and highly secure. And this is what we are talking about with, and one more thing, not just these features, but as well as it being very much more inexpensive compared to existing technologies. And this is one thing that's very compelling that will make us want to use the blockchain technology. And I'm not surprised that given its current state where it is not regulated, this will take precedence over blockchain as a financial service in time to come.
Thank you very much, Juan. Thank you for those insights. And we move over to Thomas Affinson, who's a co-founder of the Pillar project. We're very thankful for your support of this blockchain center, and to have so many of you present and even filming today. And also, I'm so excited to see such a successful project, such a successful support from the community that you received, and empowerment now to deliver. So I would like to find out from you, what are the biggest challenges and opportunities that you see over the course of this year for the blockchain industry and for your company in particular, especially the challenges and where could government, or what support would you want? How are you seeing things?
Anyone hear me? Good. So first of all, thank you so much, Tony, for this fantastic invitation here at the Blockchain Center. And you talked about you're a dreamer, so please don't stop to dream. Now to the challenges and opportunities. we, as entrepreneurs, we first and foremost see opportunities. Every challenge becomes an opportunity. I will outline both with the tremendous innovation that will come from those blockchain technologies, and you know, Long-Won has mentioned a lot of innovation that will be done on the financial services, but we see a lot of in the energy. We talked about earlier in my presentation about the citizen service. The citizen service, what it is about? It's about connection between the public institution and the government to the citizen. What can be better than that, right? So all those technologies will be leveraged by blockchain, enabling more connection. You know, at the end of the day, what it is, it's trust, it's efficiency, right? It's transparency, and these are values today more and more that people, citizens, are not willing to give up. Are simply not willing to give up. So the world is going to be decentralized, and now the idea is how to make it work in existence with regulation, in existence to help also discuss with the regulators, because the regulators are not people that are want to destroy or want to necessarily put a show stop. So we need to have an open dialogue with the regulators and see how we can use those technologies to the benefit of the good, and at the same time making sure that those regulators, as my friend from NEM has just said, are not stopping this innovation, right? We cannot stop the innovation for the greater benefit of the entire society just because we don't want to change, right? So all these things are, for us, opportunities that we see that are going to change. From our perspective at Pillar, the biggest challenge will be the education part, right? More and more people about, you can actually do something about controlling your data, right? You can actually do something about it. There are solutions, and Pillar is coming up with solutions that will help it, and this is why Pillar has been set not only as a foundation, but we call ourselves a movement, right? So if you want to be part of that movement, if you want control of your data, and if data, as our people are saying, is the oil or the gold or whatever you want to call it of the 21st century, then you need to own it. You need to have it. It's yours. Why are we giving it up? Why are we still continuing to live in this framework of data, okay, that belongs to the past? So that's the challenge for us. The challenge is how to make it. It's a huge change. It's not good, and it's not going to be overnight, because the Pillar project is about changing the way that data is owned, consumed, exchanged. Right? It's a significant change forward, and it's going to benefit all of us. Right? So these are the challenges, but we see the benefits of this movement, and we see the enthusiasm everywhere we go, including here at Vilnius, about the ambition of the project and what we want to do, and everybody see, okay, well, that actually makes sense, to have everything belongs to me, and then I can interface with everything, and that you can actually leverage these fantastic decentralized technologies in a way that is really also provides safety and security.
Thank you very much for that insight. You know, just asking, what would you want if it was a single thing from regulators that you could wish for? And then you could say, well, which particular regulator, because there's a lot, right? What would be the number one on a wish list, bucket list for the blockchain industry? What would be the number one thing you would want done this year? Because as we heard today, and as we hear all the time, and I'm a proponent of it, and the European Commission just confirmed today that there's no imminent regulation of cryptocurrencies, which is very good guidance, and it makes Europe very attractive for everybody. That's a very, very strong signal we heard, you know, for anyone, for investors, for companies who want to set up in Europe. this is the place to come. Lithuania is the place to come, right? So any regulation, because usually what happens, and I'm not very experienced in politics, but I've had a little bit of a spell in it. What usually happens is good intentions, and people come through with a nice package of new guidelines, and then what happens, other guys who are not so friendly get on top of it, and then they mix it up, and then all of a sudden you have like a ban. Starting with good intentions, things go very badly. So the political process usually for regulation is quite tricky and tiresome, and usually doesn't work well for any industry so far. So especially up and coming industry. So maybe you do know the solution, and what should we regulate? How?
Wow, it's not over the it's not the $1 million question. Today it's much more than that, right? Yes. One thing, if we have from the pillar side to ask the regulators is to work with us hand in hand, because a lot of us in the blockchain space, we understand that there are a lot of scams out there, and a lot of people are pretending and are jumping on this wagon, right, and are trying to profit from it. But there are actually a lot of people, and I see a lot of people are there participating in this industry that have genuine intentions and genuine way to help the world, advance and reap the benefit from the blockchain decentralization. So one thing from the regulator, please work with us. Don't push us. Don't push us. Don't say, let's stop this. Let's freeze that. Let's, talk to us. We have a lot to help you understand the new world, as you have also a way to help us understand how systems work. We also, sometimes we want to advance, but we're not so sure how to do it. This is a two-way street, and we can learn a lot from each other. That's really the first step. If we do that, then we're going to do great as an industry, and it will help a lot the world.
Thank you so much. And we're also very thankful to have such a great leader in Mantas Katinas, who's the CEO of Invest Lithuania. And I know his dream was also to be located here. So the Blockchain Center would love to have government involvement and regulator involvement, and people who can open doors and kick doors in and get things opened up and get permits that we need to operate. So people like you who are visionaries in our government level, people who are forward-looking, futuristic, positive, and working so hard and committing, when you could have a role probably paid 10, 20 times more than what you're getting now. So we're blessed to have Lithuanians such as yourself, obviously, and we would like to have your insights of where you see the future of blockchain, and how do you see it developing? Where will the source of the new evolution of it come from? Especially in the government areas and the areas that you work with, because you're dealing with companies all the time. You bring them in to feed our country with companies who come here, pay taxes, employ people, and ultimately pay pensions. So that's the only way we can get better pensions, is by having lots of people like you who bring businesses in and get things opened.
Thank you, Antanas. I think you're doing the same job as me, attracting foreign leaders around. Talking about blockchain, I think the important part to understand that when we're talking that the blockchain is just getting the middleman out, so a lot of the existing functions now in the world is still in the state level. So we still have a lot of the data and a lot of regulation which is still on the state level. So when we talk about innovation, if we want to create a very good ecosystem, we need to work together, because a lot of data and things is still regulated by the states. And you can name any industry. When you just register your car, if you go to health insurance, if you just go to the doctor, a lot of things is still is related to the regulated areas around. So as an agency, we're constantly looking for a competitive advantage country could create. And recently, we recognized that one of the very good ideas for a country is to define the disruptive industries and to create a more flexible regulation ecosystem than the other countries have. So we're very lucky that the Lithuanian Central Bank was the first in Europe which understood that Lithuania could create a competitive advantage, and now we have very, very good advantages in this level. So in the last 12 months, Lithuania attracted 20 companies which are already working in Lithuania as a companies, and we have in double size the licenses that Lithuania is now giving for such companies. And when we were looking at from which region these companies are coming, we recognize that most of them are coming from Asia and Israel. So this is not European, they're just trying to get into European Union. So Lithuanians as a small country always have the complex that we're too small, and that's a bad thinking, because we are operating in the European Union, which is the almost 600 million richest society in the world. So we're saying that take a look at Singapore and take a learn from the bridge economy examples, when you can create a tunnel for companies who want to work in the bigger markets, and Lithuania could do that. So naturally, the fintech is one of the industries, but blockchain is a platform which creating a lot of other industries around. And after the regulation, what next is coming, we naturally see that you need to have a couple elements out of that. One of the competence of talents around who have some specific know-hows, because when you play with that, you create some new elements out of that. Another part is the actually technical infrastructure. So Lithuanian Central Bank is planning to launch LB Chain, which is the central bank operating blockchain platform, which will be playing with the technology and data around. And that's very important, because if you have the talents and if you have modern regulation, that this technical platform is like API solutions for different companies just to play a bit with information and create some models. And after you achieve that level, when you have maybe 100 companies which are already operating, you already have the cluster which is fooling in itself. So I'm very happy for Blockchain Center. I think that's a very important part for our talent education, and I hope that from Lithuanian, the governmental leaders will have more support. And I don't know why it's happening, but in Lithuania now it's the momentum of the motivational peoples on every level. You can meet here the university leaders around which are interested in blockchain and fintech. You can meet people from the politics, you can meet people from regulators, and they want to play with the disruptors. So that's very good, good time for us, and I'm happy that we met NEM Foundation, I think 1 year ago, and now we're sitting in a blockchain center. It was just an idea, and I cannot name you, but we already have a couple interesting ideas for next development, because we travel around the world and we see that other regions also interesting in Vilnius. I think in the next 12 months we have a couple good releases out of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mantas, and we're really blessed to have you here. Really, you know, so open to, and there's so many people, I guess, that we want to talk to you here who are visiting us from Asia and who want to do things in our country, and people like you do empower and create jobs. So it's great. It's great to have you, and keep up the good work. We do have one more speaker today, which is Daniel Barr, chairman and founder of the Bid Forward. And that would be very interesting, as you know, as entrepreneurs and business people. What is the difference in mindset, right? We want to talk about mindset in blockchain and mindset in traditional businesses, because you know, a lot of people, famous economists that I met, and they said, well, what is blockchain really solving? You know, do we need it? And this is like the #1 guy in the world. You know, so it's like, maybe you can share us the difference in mindset there. That would be very, very interesting and insightful if you could.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for inviting me, and coming all the way from sunny Australia, I can enjoy a little bit of this nice weather. Yeah, it's a very good question. What's the difference in the mindset? Because as we're all here tonight, we're all probably are believers in the decentralized future that we're going to enter in. And as Tomer said, like, the future is going to be decentralized. Now, basically, is how are we going to adapt and basically become a part of it rather than try to stop it or whatever. Now, probably a bit forward than the other activities that I've been involved in this last couple of years. We started being more heavily kind of involved in early 2016, at the time when you were talking to people about blockchain or decentralized applications and whatnot. People would usually look at you with a little bit of a strange eye. And the entire market cap, just like to give you a proportion, the entire market cap at the time was less than 10 billion or around that cap. And basically, as an entrepreneur, it was very, very interesting time to be in, let's put it that way. And after about a year of kind of doing small bits and stuff here and there, and like we're very heavily active in the university and grassroots kind of developer communities space, we landed a contract with one of Australia's largest retail banks, and then with other financial institutions there, and we were really, really happy that suddenly like a few like whatever nerds that are interested in blockchain suddenly can do stuff with like the big guys, right? And I have to say that like I'm really grateful for this experience, because I learned how things work in the real world, and until very recently we were working with those banks. And there is one thing though that is really constantly coming back, and that is the old world, so to speak, the world that is not really based on decentralized principles, or as we saw very nicely in Tomer's presentation, that it's all based on a user-server architecture, right? Like it's never a mesh network kind of architecture. So this old world, particularly in this last 15-ish years, we've been kind of brainwashed to think that there's very, very limited set of business models that we can work with as entrepreneurs or as companies. And all those business models rely on basically a user bridging into something, and then someone hoarding the data and does a bunch of services and like abstracting the actual value chain. When we're looking at ventures in the decentralized world, one of the complete shifts in mindset that we all need to kind of have, both as entrepreneurs, as investors, and anyone on the ecosystem, is that you're no longer looking at a flow where there's like a user, a service provider, or a consumer for that matter. It's all kind of like stakeholders on the network, and how do you actually design a new game, a new kind of, it's a paradigm shift that like we're no longer looking at a system where like it's a traditional kind of transaction. Suddenly, like that's the beauty of blockchains and cryptocurrencies, that we can actually design completely new models. Like we can think of a product like Pillar that is a wallet, or like we're working in the same space, digital identity, on another project. And suddenly, if you have an incentivizing mechanism that you, as the one who's actually working on this project, you're not necessarily going to capitalize on that in the same sense. You're basically creating an ecosystem. So moving from this old centralized kind of thinking to an ecosystem thinking, this is probably the most new thing and like inspiring thing that I feel anyone with enough understanding of this industry should really take as a personal kind of mission to educate and involve more people in this kind of narrative. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's what the Blockchain Center will be doing. In fact, is meeting people, educating people, and empowering people to then deliver the world-changing opportunities that the center will create. So obviously, I think that's what we're learning today. It's all about decentralization. What does that mean for poor politicians? It's probably bike time, right? I mean, they're not going to be required too much longer. So I think that this is the way the world's going forward, right? And we're not going to change it. We might as well join the revolution and join the journey, as Sam Lee says. And I think that's the only way forward, right? Blockchain is here to stay. It gives us a lot of security opportunities, and these raises that young people have done, especially in Lithuania, have been just in the hundreds of millions. That's changing the country. they've never been able to get so much finance, unfortunately, from VCs, equity markets. These small countries like Lithuania, Slovenia, we could name more, just were starved for capital. And now with decentralization and everyone being able to contribute all around the world, smart people, smart kids are empowered. And this is phenomenal. This is why I'm doing it. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us, for supporting the Blockchain Center, for contributing your valuable time. And I think we've just we've run out of time to have any questions or anything, but I think everyone can discuss and talk privately. Thank you very much, everybody.